Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wave Squadron. Badonkagonk. We're going to be talking about all kinds of Star Wars things today.
Star Wars?
Star Wars.
Really?
Yes.
More
as we do every
Star
month.
Wars
Star
to
Wars.
talk about.
Star Wars.
I have talked about Star Wars enough.
Okay. Never mind, guys. Gonk, shut it down.
No, we have a whole channel talking about Star Wars. Eric.
Yes,
because I can't talk about Star Wars enough.
So today on the agenda, we're going to be having an Ahsoka. We just finished up that series yesterday, so we're going to be talking about Ahsoka. So we're going to have a Q&A. So make sure you submit any questions you have. There should be a section in chat where you can submit any questions you have or thoughts you have. We'll be talking about spoilers of the show, sure. So make sure you keep that in mind.
Yep.
And hopefully you don't get too spoiled. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's pretty good.
We're going to be doing that. After that, we're going to be pivoting to a top 5 list.
Yes.
This time about Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight.
Yes, and this all stems from our book that we'll be discussing at the end of the podcast, which is going to be on A New Dawn.
A New Dawn,
which was a interesting book.
It was.
And
it's like a prequel to Rebels, and if you're like, well, I've never read that, I don't think I'd be interested in hearing that. Oh, you might be interested in the conversation. There's a lot of cool things in that book. For fans of Rebels, yes, but also for people, I think, just interested in some good old Star Wars conversation. Because, man, that book has some crazy stuff in it.
There's some good things in it. I do like it.
Yeah.
So, first off, guys, we'll be starting off with our Q&A. Before that, I guess we can also announce what the next book is going to be, which Eric had that already.
Lords of the Sith.
So we'll be going with Lords of the Sith.
It's a Palpatine Vader novel.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what it was about.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was going to be the... I confused
you thought it was going to be about
with,
Mount Sorrow, the mountain on Endor?
No, I hope not.
No, okay.
I don't want more of that.
Is he? That was my favorite part of our Ahsoka reaction. I don't even know if it's in the video, but you go, is he looking at a mountain, a crying mountain?
It better not be a sentient mountain. So, but no, the... oh, shoot. What was I talking about? I just lost it.
The book, and then pivoting into questions, and we also want to tell people
No. I was thinking of the Luke and Billy D.
That book.
Shoot. Why can't I think of his name?
Billy D. Williams, you mean Lando?
Lando, yeah. I thought of Billy D, and I couldn't think of Lando.
I love
for some reason.
it. Welcome to our Star Wars channel.
Just spaced in my head.
Someone just now tuned in. It's like, what do these guys know about Star Wars? And you're like,
it just blanked on me.
Lando? No, it happens to me all the time. All the time. Either it blanks on me, or I just say something completely different, and I'm like, that's not what I meant to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nope, I've had that happen.
Well, hey, if you guys are here for the podcast for the first time, welcome. This is something that we like to do once a month, and please subscribe to Wave Squadron, because even though we are now officially in the Star Wars off-season, there's nothing currently a television show or movie coming out. We will not stop talking about Star Wars, and you want to listen, so make sure you guys subscribe right here to Wave Squadron.
And if you're wondering why I have a mustache and no beard, I was in a play and I didn't have to, but I chose to shave it for the play. So
it wasn't your Biggs Darklighter cosplay?
No, it wasn't Biggs cosplay. It was not. So
that's what I thought it was. Now I don't like it.
Well, I'll do that for Halloween.
What's your plans moving forward with the mustache?
Well, I'm just waiting for things to grow.
Yeah.
But people keep making me shave it to do like Ted Lasso and stuff.
Yeah, we do that. It's a lot of fun. Aaron, we might have some questions.
Yes. Well, let's get into questions on Ahsoka. Let's see here. What is this? Michelle Bellman, do you think there has ever been a Force-sensitive Noti?
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I think the thing that I'm kind of really excited by with the Ahsoka series is the opening up of the possibilities of a brand new galaxy. New things that we could see. Now, I know that what we did see is kind of like, all right, well, I know nightsisters, and I know Ezra, you know. I know the Mortis Gods. We saw some things that we have seen before, but I'm personally excited, to jump into stuff that might be really different in this new galaxy. And the Noti, I'm actually really happy with the amount of stuff that we got to saw from. But, Aaron, we didn't get to see if their shells are part of their body or something they put on.
Like if they're like a hermit crab that adjusts their, or the little one even had it too.
Did he?
So yeah, there was like a little one that had a little like shell.
Yeah. Well, everybody else has a shell. He can get a little one.
Yeah, but where do you get bigger fake rocks? Are they made?
Yeah, they're made in the sea. Actually, I have no idea how shells are made. Dang it. All right, I got to look up how shells are made. How are seashells made? That's as important. Aaron, a force sensitive, though. Do you think it would happen?
I mean, I think probably a lot of creatures could have force sensitivity. I don't know where they are in their sentienceness, right? Like how much they would like I don't know if they have like a certain method and stuff they do and it's just how they operate, or if they understand on a grander scale more, right? Like kind of maybe how tribal they are, because they're very kind of tribal wanderers and stuff. But I don't see a reason why they couldn't be.
I mean, we have to do our due diligence and say that anybody has the ability to use the Force, but how sensitive and how powerful can you be?
Sure, and there's some creatures and stuff, like just animals and whatnot, that kind of have either, maybe it's not like the Force, but there's like a Force sensitivity that they have where they can kind of connect or manipulate or whatever, and they utilize that too.
The Force is in all things. The tree.
Yeah.
The rock.
Now, the question we had before was talking more so about like this new galaxy and what kind of connection the Force has to it. Is it just in a galaxy? Is it in the universe? But we saw different things here, whether it's Force ghosts or people using the Force. So like there's still a connection here on this planet. Yeah. I don't know if that necessarily means there's not, but there's also the statues at the end, which I feel like also connect to the idea that there's something grander here.
We have to remember, and it is ill-defined, but there is the living Force and there's the cosmic Force, and I feel like the Mortis Gods are more towards the cosmic Force. The living Force, though, it's generated by life, right? We have the wellspring of the Force.
Do you think that's more wellspring? Whereas
we have the wellspring of the Force,
cosmic?
The midichlorians spread throughout the galaxy. I mean, I think it might be implied that they could have spread further. The Imperial certainly. Sure. Do they originate in the other galaxy? Do they originate here? Doesn't even matter at a certain point, Maybe there are billions of galaxies that the Force has spread to, or it was always there, or is never there, and it's all a trick.
Sure.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But how do those Noti get their clothes on if their shells are attached to their backs?
You're saying with the Force?
Maybe. Or zippers. Or Velcro.
So I'm going to go with the Force.
Okay.
They all have the Force.
They all have the Force.
We just don't get to see it. They don't know how to use it yet.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to, how about Mike Lennon, who says still confused on where Merrok came from. He was obviously a Night Sister magic, but did Morgan make him? Doesn't really matter. Homie is dead. Still curious though.
Yeah. Well, I think at the very least we can say that he used to be an Inquisitor.
Sure.
Or his body used to be an Inquisitor.
Is there assumption that he is just all magic, or that he has been resurrected, as we saw? Night Sisters have done this before, right?
Yeah.
We saw, whether you've played Fallen Order, or you've watched Clone Wars, or you watched Ahsoka, there's this magic that can bring things back and let them continue to fight. Yeah. Is that what he was? I think he's more of that rather than just being straight up creation magic. So I think that there's there was a person there, and who was that person? Like, maybe we know in the future, maybe we won't ever know, but...
Well, we have to also look at what was shown to us. When the Night Troopers died, eventually, they didn't burst into smoke.
Sure.
Merrok burst into smoke.
Sure.
What if it's empty armor and he's
just a magical suit of armor, and that's all it really was?
He spoke at one point, didn't he?
He did talk, yeah.
I need to do, now that the show is over, I guess got to rewatch everything too.
Sure.
I haven't done any rewatch other than certain scenes.
I want to also watch, there's a Master and Apprentice behind the scenes on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I need to watch that too.
I was like, that sounds interesting to have what did the directors and actors or whatever things they shoot, because some of those have been really cool and showed a lot of really interesting things. But yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go with the idea that Merrok has been either brought back or kept alive through magic.
Do you think Morgan was the catalyst for that?
I don't know if Morgan was. I mean, it's the best example of it because we don't know a lot of other Night Sisters at the time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what's the reach of the Great Mothers, or was it from something else? I would say Morgan's probably the best option, though.
I would say she did seem a little limited in terms of what she could do with her Night Sister flame, her magic.
Yeah.
She seems to be a lot more focused on combat. We had Night Sisters the two that escort Asajj to fight Dooku. They were blessed with invisibility powers from Talzin and the other Night Sisters doing their ritual, but they seem to be a little bit more fighters, so to relate them to Jedi rather than being consulars and more guardians, maybe. I don't know. But it would seem Morgan, the fight she has with Ahsoka was my favorite. I think my favorite fight of the whole show. I love the choreography in it. I love the intensity. I love the ferocity. I love how
it was very fluid.
How fluid it was, and it really did feel like two chess masters going at 1,000 miles an hour. Loved it. Have you ever watched like the chess people that do the speed chess and just, you know? And it's like, how are they processing that? Like, you know, how are they doing that? I don't know how. I'm dumb, but they're smart.
From what I understand, it's something to do with vibrators.
Man, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right. Well, maybe that's what was going on.
Yeah,
okay.
that must have been what it was.
Maybe that's what happened to Merrok.
So, yeah. I don't know for sure, but my assumption is that he was once alive.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll get more story on him in the past, like something that goes back a bit more.
Yeah.
Because I mean, is that the longest? That's the latest Inquisitor we know of, right? Right.
Yeah.
This is the farthest into the timeline of having an Inquisitor we've gone so far.
I would say so. 10 years after Return of the Jedi.
I believe so.
Yeah.
All the others have typically, a lot of them have died before Episode 4. You know, there's been a lot of them that we've seen have died early.
We saw a lot.
So maybe this has been a resurrected one of that, or it's just someone who's lasted a long time, or it's just straight up magic in a suit of armor. But the thing with that is, like we said, the talking, I think, for the suit of armor magic element seems like a weird part.
Yeah.
You could also say the same thing with Enoch, right? Like maybe Enoch's some kind of weird
I'm going to
thing.
assume that Enoch does not look as pretty as his helmet.
Yeah.
And we saw those Death Troopers. They do not look pretty.
Sure.
Thrawn has had to recycle his resources. Absolutely. Good question. Thank you so much.
We did have two, what do they call on YouTube?
Super chats.
Super chats.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we had two of those.
Give me some.
Let me see here. We have Vapors,
Vapors,
who said, "Do you wish we could have had a better reunion with Ezra and Hera? I would have loved a longer sequence with an embrace and being introduced to Jason."
I mean, I don't. Would I like to see that? Absolutely, but I'm also. We shouldn't be impatient. I think that we'll probably get a little more there. That was really just Ezra, I'm home moment, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You know, that is one thing that, you know, now that we're done with the show and I was able to kind of go, what are people thinking? I do feel like people need to remember, this isn't a 6-hour movie. This is a television show season. And then it's not done. It's not over. We're not,
sure.
You know, how many TV shows have you watched, you get to the end, you're like, oh, but there's so much more to get to, you know? It's that's an exciting feeling for me.
Sure.
You know, as opposed to they didn't get to the things that I wanted. But
if you watch Lost Season 1, you get to the end of that season, you're like, what?
Yeah.
Where's the rest of this?
I mean, there's certain things that are satisfying, but there's certain things that are left open-ended.
Sure.
You know?
And whether that's going to be more shows that they cover. Because, currently they've been really jumping between different shows, kind of telling some stories, kind of filling in gaps and stuff, too. But we also have the movie on the way, too.
Sure.
So, a lot of this stuff, I think, will start being filled in either through other shows or through the movie. Mm-hmm. But,
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to. I personally don't like to go to a storyteller and say, "Hey, I thought of something better." You know.
Sure.
It's like, well, yeah, but you're building off the thing that I already, So would I like to see an embrace? Yeah, but if given the choice between do I want to see those two embrace or would I want to have Chopper be the first one to recognize them, even with the helmet on? I think I prefer the Chopper, and we got that.
Sure. There's more connection with Chopper that we have from
not necessarily
Rebels
more.
And
it's
stuff
just
too.
There's something about it. I love the unspoken feeling of it. That like you have to we are so good at knowing what Chopper is feeling, and in that silent moment, we understood what was happening too.
I also have more hopes of what Ezra's future is.
Yep.
Like him being a Jedi, he doesn't have an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
We know Jason is Force sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's an interesting part of the found family kind of idea. We have Obi-Wan who, here was my best friend. Here's his son. I'm going to train his son. You could have here was my master's son. I'm going to train him,
Sure.
And then you could even have the ideas of, I spent time trying to figure out where the heck Kanan's lightsaber went. There was,
I remember seeing it after he died.
There was some debate on it going to Thrawn or not going to Thrawn.
Yeah.
Governor Price had it at one point, and she showed it to Thrawn, but he was a hologram.
Oh, that's right.
So a lot of people are like, they're like, well, no, he never got it because it was a hologram, and then Governor Price never goes there.
Sure.
So people are saying maybe it got blown up on Lothal, inside the dome thing that they have, right? So there was some discussion there, and then other people were like, no, I think Thrawn might have it.
I mean, some time passes between those two things, and I can imagine a scenario in which Thrawn is like, I like art, and lightsabers are one of the only pieces of art that a Jedi creates, and bring it to me, send it by mail.
Yeah,
I don't know.
by mail.
Yeah, so he couldn't. I don't know, but we do know that there are 2 of those type of emitters.
Sure, at least that Huyang had or anything. But I think that it could be interesting passing on a saber that looks like Kanan's because of the emitter and stuff, maybe onto Jason when he's prepared for it.
I like that.
Whether that is Ezra's saber that he made, or they get Kanan's saber again and pass it on to him that way.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some really cool things you could have with Ezra and Jason because of the connection to his dad. It's like, hey, tell me about my dad.
Sure.
Because like you can hear about it from your mom, but it might be different than hearing about it like this was like his student, his his apprentice. So I think
I like the idea of the passing of the saber from master to student, but from father to son. I think would be just as good. So yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you for that super chat.
Thank you. We have another one from Devon DeBoss, who said 2 out of 5 for me. Felt more like Rebels Season 5. The best thing was Baylan's story. Treated Thrawn like a character we've never seen. Lightsaber fight scenes sucked, not Hayden.
Interesting.
Overall, jammed packed.
Yeah. I would be curious what your favorite lightsaber scenes are. I don't think it was a secret that this is Rebels Season 5.
No, and I also...
In fact, wasn't that said like on the stage of Celebration? I mean, not everybody saw that, I suppose.
Sure. No. I do think that there's a tricky line of trying to thread the needle of people who are familiar with Rebels and Clone Wars, because not every person has seen that. A lot of people have only seen live action.
Sure.
And then also trying to introduce all these characters to people who don't know these characters at all, right?
Sure.
And I think it's a tricky thing to weave. So I think they introduced Thrawn really well, but I also felt like, oh, I've already seen this guy, and this is still him.
Yeah.
No, so I really like that aspect a lot.
And I think it is important to remember that it's doing a war on 2 fronts, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, it should be about what you feel about, not, I'm glad that people come to us and like, what did you guys think? But I try not to do that. I like to keep my stuff, and I guess I should say our little group that we have to talk about these things. I like to keep it insular, and I like to think about my experience when I watch something. So I'm bummed that you didn't enjoy that as much, but I super agree that Baylan was one of the greatest things about this season. In terms of seeing something new.
I really liked him. It's also my least favorite part of the season, but that's only because like I'm worried about what the future for that character is.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious, and I want to know. And since I didn't get to dive into it that much, and with Rey's passing, I'm like, where do we go with this now? Yeah. I did see some people like fan casting Liev Schreiber as like a Baylan, like someone to take the role. But I don't know. I just, as long as they continue the story, I just want to see where they're going with it. Yeah. So I hope they can still do that.
Fan casting was responsible for Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, so that's not unprecedented.
Sure.
Yeah. Whenever you do recasting, I mean, you do want someone to capture the essence of a character, but I never want to, like, I personally never like the idea of casting that dude that does an amazing Harrison Ford impression as Han Solo. I would rather have an actor that makes real acting choices and not trying to just impersonate somebody. So whoever they do get, and I do think they should recast. I don't think that you need to go down the AI or deep fake, route with a character that's so fresh. Whoever they get, I hope that they see what Rey was doing and try to go down that road, but also bring something that, of them to it, right? Like, the reason I think Ezra works so well is because, like, that's the job of a casting director, isn't just to, hey, can you do this? It's to see something in them that reminds you, but also what can they bring fresh to the table, too, right? So I think you can do that with Baylan, even though he is a very recent character for us all. But, yeah, it is no fault of anybody. It is the worst part of the show is how excited we were about that guy being in that show, and then he was taken from us. Like, I still remember when he came out on stage, and we were just so.
It was only us 3 that jumped up. Jazzed. No one else did, right?
Yeah, only the 3 of us stood and clapped.
We're like, yeah.
But now, like, if everybody was able to go back to that moment, that whole theater would have been on their feet. So, oh man,
yeah,
it sucks. And not just because of a Star Wars connection. The guy was such a great actor, and from what I understand, what I've seen from like everything else that I've seen of him behind the scenes and in other various conversations, a really, really sweet, gentle dude.
Yeah. I don't know what they're gonna do. I've seen both ways of people, like, you take a character and now it's an entirely new character, basically.
Yeah.
Like I've seen one where like they couldn't get back the original actor after they switched networks on a show, and they recasted the character and made them like entirely different.
Sure.
But I've also seen ones where like they try to like feel like the last person who had to play the character just to kind of keep that feeling. So I don't know what I'd want out of it. I just hope that we can still get the story that they were imagining, you know? Like that's one of the things we talked about too, I think, during the reactions is, you know, with this series, like they're looking at an overall plan that they have, right? So it didn't end and give you all the answers because they're working on where their story is going, what kind of lore they're going to unfold in front of us, you know? Yeah. As opposed to a lot of the criticisms of the sequel trilogy was that there wasn't that idea. There wasn't a plan of where we want to go and what is Baylan looking for?
They were going the more George Lucas route of like, I have an idea maybe, but I haven't committed it to paper, so let's just make the next one, and then the next one always changes anyway.
Yeah, but I feel like Dave and the people working behind the scenes on like this series is, what is Baylan looking for? We have an idea for it.
Well, and I mean, honestly, like plans are awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like if you have a 10-year plan for your story and you stick 100% to it, I think that can be really cool. But I mean, you know, over the course of 10 years, you might change as a storyteller. You might have things that you want to, you know, focus on that you didn't want to, you didn't think about 10 years from then, right? Like there's always going to be some looseness. Like when Captain Rex comes into Rebels and he say, "Oh, we didn't betray our Jedi. We removed our chips." Like it implies that they did that before Order 66. But then later when he's actually, you know, Dave's actually writing out what's happening, that's not exactly what happened. So things change. Stories, you know, slightly move, and the puzzle pieces don't fit perfectly.
Caleb Doom is a little different, right? Sure. That's another one too, where it's like, but I thought it was here, not here. Yeah. You know, he turned right, not left. You know, those kind of things. But we're talking about Baylan too. I saw a few questions and stuff. We can touch this on real quick, but or maybe real long. I don't know. Some of the thoughts were, what do you think Baylan is searching for, or what do you hope Baylan is searching for? Like either one. Like, do you think there's something, or is there something you want him to be looking for?
Well, what do we know? We know we saw the 3 statues of the Mortis Gods. We know that the daughter statue did not have its head, whether that's through weathering in time or...
Is there a meaning behind it?
Maybe the nightsisters are like, you know, fuck this lady. I
don't know. And I don't think it's necessarily... I don't know if it relates to the idea of Ahsoka and like the saving of her during the arc and everything, but because during that still, like the father died as well, right? Or the son?
They all died.
They all died?
Yeah.
So like, I'm like, well, just her being dead, like they all, like someone else should at least be missing a head then, you know? So I don't know. I want to say it's weathering, and it's like trying to be like, hey, if you don't see all of them, you just see some statues, will people pick up on it? Will they be curious? Like, what is that? But
you think we'll see the Mortis Gods?
I don't know, like in live action?
Because, I mean, you 100% cast Sam Witwer as the son.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think his chin messes it up.
No. His chin's perfect.
For the son?
He's so good at it.
I think he'd be great for the character, yeah.
Because I love what he did with the son, because like when you really pay attention to the way he's delivering his lines, he goes in and out of like, this time it's Maul, this time it's Palpatine, this time it's Starkiller. You know, like he brings all these Darksider feelings into it. But I have always loved his performance of when he accidentally kills his father, and he's like, "Father, no, it didn't have to be this way." You know, which, I mean, we all, when we look at Darksiders and the dark side of the Force, there's an element of like, oh, fuck yeah, they look cool, you know, and look at the powers they have, but they are defined by their sorrow, they're defined by their ego, and they're defined by their grief, I suppose, right? Like Anakin feels grief, and that's what is mainly, you know, takes him to the side. Dooku feels grief for what the Jedi have become, and it goes to the side. You know, Maul has a lot of grief. A lot of those characters have a lot of grief, and Palpatine, we don't know what his grief is, but we do know his ego.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you hope we'll cast someone for the father, but we'll get Sam Witwer as the
or we
son.
just not see him at all. Maybe it's better not to see him at all. It's one of those things where you see something like that and you go, what if we see?
Okay.
And if we do, it's a mistake not to cast him.
True. I think Gonk wants Sam Witwer either way.
I think so. I think he very much does.
My thoughts on Baylan, I don't know if it's what I hope. I mean, I kept joking before about like, oh man, they're going to another galaxy. They're going to go to Earth, Eric. They're going to the galaxy far away.
Yeah.
You know? But I thought it would be interesting if like Baylan was like a vessel that we had towards the far back to the beginning of the Force. Just because, like, back then we're going to have nobody. We don't know anyone.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on. We don't know a lot about Baylan, but being introduced to him, like, now, perhaps that's either the protagonist or antagonist for... Because he talked about, like... he talked about the waning and waxing, basically, of, like, coming into power, going into war, and it just kind of is a never-ending cycle. And, like, he wanted to go back to the beginning and, like, stop things and stuff. And having the Mortis Gods and the World Between Worlds, like, there's some connection there to different places and times and all that kind of stuff too. So I'm like, what if he's searching for like the beginning of the Force and trying to like, maybe we can stop the Sith, maybe we can stop the Jedi, maybe we can stop everything. I don't know. Like I'm curious on what he's looking for, but that was my thought of like, I don't know what they call it, a Bible epic of like the Force is going to be
the prime
for
Jedi.
what 25,000 years in the past or
Dawn
whatever
of
it was.
the Jedi, yeah.
Like I don't know what that's going to look like, but do we just get introduced to all new people, or do we have someone that we follow back there, and that's why we're going to that time?
Sure. Yeah.
So that was my one thought that I had of like, I don't know what else he's looking for necessarily. The Bendu? I don't know. I don't know.
No, I mean the Bendu. Honestly, it's not that big of a stretch to connect the Bendu with the Force gods of Mortis. When Kanan is going out into the wilderness because he hears something when he's blinded, and the spiders are following him and stuff, he follows the Morai to Bendu. Yeah. He follows that owl. The Morai is pretty much the daughter, in a way, or at least a spirit of.
There's like a spirit or a
something.
consciousness, a Jiminy Cricket.
It's not unprecedented that the Bendu has something to do with the Mortis gods.
Sure. I feel like I saw some people being like, why is that there? How did it get to another galaxy? But I was like, but it was in the World Between Worlds, which is like, how do you get there?
Yeah.
Like that's just in the middle of nothing.
Yeah, sure.
It was sitting there on Ahsoka's little thing to say, hey, Ezra, check this out,
Yeah,
so I'm like, if it can get there, I can believe it gets anywhere.
Yeah.
So.
It's mysterious, and I like it that it's mysterious. In fact, sometimes I enjoy mystery more than I do answers.
That sounds ridiculous.
Why?
Because you need answers.
Why?
Because you do.
Why?
Now you just keep asking questions.
Why?
But because you want to know the answer.
But the why is fun.
Because you want to know the answer.
Yeah, but sometimes it's fun to just to get to a topic that you don't know the answer.
Why?
Exactly.
All right. Ozzy Boss Johnston also had a super chat.
Yeah.
This says they already sent in a question, but just wanted to show some love from New Zealand, I'm assuming, and Z. You guys are amazing. Whenever a new Star Wars project comes out, I come straight to your channel to imagine I'm watching it with y'all.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you
so much.
We're glad that we can have that like camaraderie of like get to watch it with people that enjoy Star Wars,
I always feel, and I know this is dumb, but I always feel like if I could visit anywhere, New Zealand is where I want to go.
Because of Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, man.
I knew you were going to go there.
Those behind-the-scenes features are so great, and that country looks so beautiful.
There's a lot of horses.
There's a lot of horses. And a lot of horse women.
Horse women.
Yeah.
The way you said it sounds weird, but I know.
No, it's not weird. You know what I mean.
The way you said it sounds weird, but I know what you mean.
You brought the weirdness.
Christopher Killian wants to know, did you think that the 3PO cameo was random and weird?
No. I think that it was necessary because we can't have a Carrie Fisher cameo. I
think if Carrie Fisher was still with us, it would have been her showing up and giving the moment to be like, no, what are you talking about? Why wasn't I here for the vote?
Yeah.
Why'd you guys do this behind my back? Next time, let me know. But I did clear her for this, and she'd have came in a lot harsher than 3PO did, I think.
Sure.
So I think 3PO was the way of kind of bridging that gap of like, here's what we would like to do. Do we try to do a CGI look, or do we send C-3PO, have him be like the messenger?
Yeah, I know. I mean, and I love that his exchange he has with Senator Xiono as well. Xiono giving like the shade to droids, and 3PO kind of like 3PO is not going to square up and fight you conversationally, but he will stunt on you a little bit and then not realize that he did. And I feel like he did that in that conversation. But no, I mean, not any more than I see any legacy character like 3PO or R2 or Chewbacca that you can see them, recognize them, and there's not any weirdness of like, that ain't really them, So I welcome more 3PO. In fact, I tweeted this out, like having 3PO and the idea of a brand new galaxy, like how interesting would it be? I know 6 million forms of communication, and that's how 3PO is useful as a protocol droid. He is to make it more biblical, like he can speak in tongues, he can communicate with anybody. But it might be interesting to see him be confronted with languages he's never heard of, with syntaxes he has no idea, cultural ideas that he cannot translate. And it might be cool to, like, what does a protocol droid do then? Like, a droid, a computer brain can process sounds way easier than we can. So it might be cool to, like, see a protocol droid put together a puzzle piece of a language versus just knowing it because they downloaded it because someone just
someone else already knew it and programmed it into them.
So I would like to, if we were ever going to go into, like, let's explore the new galaxy, bring 3PO. That'd be cool.
Sounds neat.
Yeah.
All right. And then the last super chat I think I see right now from Samil. Says, I think Sam Witwer was the face of the sun statue.
Yeah.
Which
I can see that.
Was.
I mean, yeah, if you have a visual effects artist and they're like, what are we making? It's like, well, George, came to me one day about these God things, and here's the things from there. It's like, okay, well, I'll just make it look like that. And I do feel like the sun was based off. No, I don't feel like it. I know the sun's look was based off Sam Witwer because the sun's look is based off an alternate costume from The Force Awakens, from The Force Unleashed.
Yep, there you go.
So
yes, you did your thing before I got to say anything.
Yep.
You were like, I'm like, he knows what he did.
Give me a second, I'll figure it out.
We also had a couple people who said that the Ahsoka series is 9 years. So
9 years what?
9 years after Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, because we were talking about
or Rebels. I always get confused 5 years and 10 years after Return of the Jedi.
Okay, well, let me read through these here.
Yeah.
Much love, guys. Been subbed since season 2 of Rebels. Insane how it's been 9 years since the debut. I can't wait to see the look of Thrawn's face when he gets note of Anakin having a son. Filoni is a goat. Thank you, Icy Soul. Maybe I was mixing that with the next one here from Scar Chest, who said, guys, Dave Filoni said that Ahsoka is 9 years after Rebels.
Sure.
So 9 years since the debut. Is he saying that because it's been 9 years?
I would say so, yeah. We know that it's at the very least it's after Mandalorian Season 3, which is a couple years after Mandalorian Season 1, which I think is 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Didn't Rebels end in Return of the Jedi?
No,
so
come on.
Are we 9 yearsing it from like a New Hope-ish area,
yeah.
or 9 yearsing it from Return of the Jedi area?
Sure.
Because it ended.
Again, I will get a tattoo of the Star Wars timeline, so whenever things like this pop up, I'll just whip off my shirt, spin, and we'll be able to know. And I can update it.
That's what we need.
Yep.
Yeah. Are you going to do it in the front or the back? I do in the back, right?
I think I'll need both.
Okay.
It's a long timeline.
Yeah. All right. Like, you're going to go, like, in lines?
I was thinking,
or just like
a big spiral.
It just goes around you. Cool. Do that.
Yeah.
That way you just.
Yeah, I'd be like Aang, like it has the arrows all over the place, but it's the Star Wars timeline.
It'd be great if you're just spinning around and it just keeps going down your body.
Can you imagine, like, for some reason, tens of thousands of years later, my body's the only thing of our human civilization, and they're like, what is this on his skin? They're like, well, apparently he followed a religion of the Force. And someone's like, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and they do it too.
That'd be funny. All right. Nick Rocca says, do you think they are teasing Aboleth?
Abeloth.
Abeloth?
From the Legacy of the Force novels. Look, I mean, when you talk about the Mortis Gods and then you talk about EU things that you bring back into canon, Abeloth is absolutely a possibility, right? I mean, that's why Thrawn is here. That's why a lot of things that come back into canon can work so well, right? Because we can honor them. Personally, Abeloth is one of my least favorite things in the EU. I didn't really love Legacy of the Force as it was. I mean, I was reading that when it came out, year by year. And Abeloth was just something that, at least at the time, I was like, I don't know. And then they kind of like, once the Clone Wars came out, they kind of like made her into the mother figure, And I just feel like, doesn't that kind of ruin what we're talking about? Like, if we have the daughter as the light side and the son as the dark side and the balance is the father, then what is the mother? Like, it doesn't really fit in the equation for me, So maybe that's one thing, but I'm super open to it. just because I didn't like Abloff when she was brought in, in the old EU, doesn't mean I might not like her or something like her in the new canon.
Gotcha.
I'm a different person than I was when I read those books.
It's like Baylan standing on a statue where the father's just like, she's over there.
Over that way. We got divorced.
Yeah.
I got the kids. She got my money.
She got the house where we live over there.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe. There's if you look into various religions and stuff, like the Abrahamic religions, like ancient texts have God having a consort or a wife, so you could maybe go that direction with an Abloff-like character in relation to the father. I don't know. Maybe.
And most other like mythologies with gods have them with like
they can, yeah,
another.
Sure, yeah.
And they have.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we should, look at that idea of Abloff coming into the story as a certainty, like I've seen some people say. Like, no, it is. You might be right, but you don't know you're right.
The worst thing about that is if that's where they are in their mind and it's not that, they're going to be mad that it's not that.
Oh, Aaron, that's unprecedented. When has that ever happened? Snoke!
Boner.
Yeah.
Like, it's just getting that idea of like, you can have. I think it's fun to have theories and theory craft and do all that, but don't necessarily be like, oh, well, if the creators didn't do my vision, then it's necessarily wrong. Just try to make sure to keep that open mind of what other alternatives we could do.
Sure.
And maybe they're holding on to some of these other ideas for something else.
Maybe.
Or maybe that it doesn't show up in Ahsoka, or if they do the Heir to the Empire movie or whatever they're going to do with that, like maybe it shows up in the 25,000 years before or something along those lines.
We have no idea the stuff the skeleton crew will be finding out there.
What are they going to do?
We have no idea. Yeah, I mean, I want to keep all avenues open, and I just want to make sure that I'm conserving my opinion and first reaction to the storytellers that are telling the story, not the entire internet all at once.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have a few more super chats come in. I can read real quick here. Could there be an Ahsoka type character for the sequel trilogy or Clone Wars type show to build that era more, like a secret apprentice of Rey/Kylo?
I hope so. It certainly deserves it. I think that if you're a fan of the supplemental material that came out for the prequels, then you should be just as wanting that for the sequel trilogy.
Think about how much Clone Wars helped with like the feeling of clones in general, right? Like I feel like Clone Wars added so much between 2 and 3 to where like watching like episode 3 with the knowledge of Clone Wars just kind of changes some stuff, And I would love to have that where I know people are upset with the movie should have done a better job and told the whole story and this and that, but I'm like, I'm fine with having other material that also like fills in and tells you more story that maybe they didn't have time to do.
Sure.
Maybe they had to cut. Maybe they didn't think about. And you're like, you know what? This fits in much better with this. So I would love to have like an animated series around that time.
Sure. Me too.
Or I'm hoping that we take some of these stories that we're doing now with like Ahsoka, Mandalorian and whatnot, and we touch on in the future further. Like we're filling gaps, and I know that they're working on clone Palpatine things, and it's filling in things between that and Bad Batch and stuff of like, this was a process that has been going on, you just didn't know it. Whenever you watch Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, you didn't know there was a second Death Star still being made, but when you get there it is. So now you're, oh, dang, okay, there's that. You also didn't know there was a third Death Star being made out of a planet that used to be a Jedi planet. Like you didn't know this stuff.
And if you bring the old EU into it, you didn't know there was a prototype Death Star that was just like the outer casing and the weapon, and then we used that. And then you didn't know there was another prototype Death Star.
like I think that is more ridiculous of like, it was always just a Death Star, but...
Sure, but honestly...
things happen where it's like, just because you didn't know it was there doesn't mean that like, they completely failed everything. It just means like there's more room for more stories we can tell, and I'm excited for the stories we can get.
There's also plenty of room in this space opera for ridiculousness.
Oh yeah,
I mean, all Star Wars has ridiculousness. That's part of why it's fun. That's why children can watch it and understand it, because it doesn't take itself super serious. It doesn't need to be. And in fact, I think it's not Star Wars if it is super serious.
Andor though,
it has some ridiculous moments in Andor.
Does it?
Yeah, there's always some ridiculous moments. There's humor, there's happiness, there's times of great joy, great sorrow.
Sure.
Andor is certainly aimed for the most mature of Star Wars fans, I think. I don't think that young kids can watch it and understand everything, but young kids get Star Wars Resistance, and adults might not like it as much.
Sure.
There's room for everybody.
And
also, like,
the High Republic cartoon that just came out for like young kids.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
That one's a good one for young ones.
No, when it comes to supplemental material for the sequel trilogy, I just hope that the fandom, especially the people that don't like the sequel trilogy, can chill a little bit, because the reason we got Clone Wars isn't because everybody was asking for more prequel stuff. It was because George Lucas didn't give a crap. And he's like, I got money, honey, and I'm going to be making – I want to increase the technology for daytime television. So I will put all my money into it. Like, George Lucas, like, they didn't make any money on Clone Wars. He lost money on Clone Wars. But because of that, he not only built a new generation of people that could appreciate Star Wars, but he also changed a lot of people's minds, or at the very least adjusted the way people thought about those characters. But Disney's a business, you know, and at the end of the day, if people are like, we hate them, forget about it, and, you know, throw that side of Star Wars in the trash, they might not do it, you know. So
sure.
Honestly, I would feel like even if I didn't like those movies, I would welcome that type of material maybe a little bit more than I would if being me that liked them.
Sure. And I feel like that's what happened when Disney first took over, too, was that they were like, let's stay away from the prequels because everyone hates that.
They canceled Clone Wars.
So sequel trilogy stuff, they were like, let's make it feel more like original trilogy and really focus on that kind of thing. And then like when that started falling through a little bit more, they've leaned a lot more into some of the prequel stuff. I mean, I would not have expected back when the original trilogy was coming out to be like, oh, we're going to have a character flying a Naboo starfighter, you know, because like that felt like a thing where it's like, that's a prequel thing. You pull that away, have them fly an X-Wing. People like X-Wings, you know, but no, the Naboo starfighter, I'm like, yes, I love the Naboo starfighter.
Dude, when the Clone Wars movies was coming out and Christopher Lee voiced Count Dooku in that movie, Samuel L. Jackson voiced Mace Windu in that movie, Hayden Christensen was like, I'm interested, and they're like, no, we're going another way, because of the vitriol the fandom had for a lot of what Hayden went through and did, and that's really sad and it's angry. I mean, I love Matt Lanner, and you know, if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't have gotten some amazing performances from Matt Lanner. It's why I'm just not too focused on like responding to hate.
Sure.
You know, if I'm a storyteller and I tell a story and some people don't like it, I'm not gonna be like, well, I'll stop. I'm like, no, I'll tell my next story, and maybe I'll put a little bit of the response into that. Yeah, but you don't want it to be the point, you know?
Sure.
So.
No, I get what you mean. I have the same thing, like, you know, they having Hayden coming back for things and having Ahmed Best coming back for things. Like, I've been, oh, man, I'm so happy for that, you know? And I hope the same thing happens with all the things that happen with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah. Dude,
you know?
we've been eating so good with Hayden. Like the Vader scene in Obi-Wan, like when the mask comes off and I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. And then he does it. You only see one eye, but that eye looks right at you and says, I did.
He's acting so much with one eye.
That's so good. And I watch that scene all the time, and it makes me so emotional. And on the flip side, we get Anakin talking with Ahsoka. It's so different. And Hayden gets to bring those performances years and years after it felt like Star Wars abandoned him and the fans abandoned him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Love it.
No, the cheers he got at Celebration were great.
You guys are making me emotional. I loved it. Loved it so much.
The Panda also said, love your channel. Been a fan of Blind Wave since Flash Season 2. Woo. Do you think we'll see more of Shin? And do you think Luke will show up in the Filoni movie, or will he be on his island by then? Also, I think Baylan will find the mother.
Yeah, no, Luke wouldn't be on. I mean, he could be on Oct. I don't think Luke would be on the island, because Han says
he's got to build the thing, the temple. They got to have Ben. Yeah, he has to start teaching, and all that has to crumble down. Yeah. And even what we saw when they did the flashback, like he looked younger than what he was at that point of telling the story, but he is older than where he was last time we saw him.
Absolutely.
I feel like.
Yeah.
So we definitely have time on that.
Yeah. I know there are some people that are like, well, what's the point? I don't want to see anything. It ultimately ends terribly. And I want to be like, all things end terribly. You know, that doesn't mean that the stuff that happened before isn't meaningful or worth something. So, yeah, I want to see more Luke. It would be great. I just hope that they really think about and can nail how they show someone like Luke Skywalker. I'm definitely not opposed to just recasting the characters. I would be 100% fine with Alden Ehrenreich coming back as Han Solo, and a thing after between Harrison Ford things. I'm a fan of Phantom of the Opera. I don't have one Phantom. I have 7 in my head when I'm hearing those stories, and I don't need to have one over the other, or I don't need to be like
Eric. That's the most ridiculous. There's one Phantom, and it's the Phantom Menace.
Excuse me, there's only one return. It's not of the king, it's of the Jedi. Hey, I just made some Lord of the Rings nerd vomit.
No, I get you on that. I think they could recast him and do some things with him that way. I know a lot of people were for Sebastian doing that.
Sure.
But I would love to be able to utilize those characters more, especially with like Carrie's passing and different things too, of finding like young Leia was great.
Yeah.
I think young Han Solo did a really good job. There's things I've watched where it's like, here are some things he does that's trying to emulate Harrison Ford, Han Solo.
Yeah.
But he's also got some of his own, Han Solo-isms in there and stuff too. Like his own things he's done. And you got to get to the point where it's like, at some point, this Han Solo will become this Han Solo. It's also why, like, I really hope they don't like waste what they could do with characters or actors that could play characters still now. Like I really would love like we have Tamara Morrison being able to be like Boba Fett now, being an older Boba Fett. I love that. Like, I'd love to see Boba Fett before New Hope, like in between episodes 3 and 4 and what he's done. And like, you could recast someone for that, or you could get like Daniel Logan, who played the younger clones, and like I think that would be a cool thing to do. But the more and more they wait, then you get to the point where it's like, well, let's tell more stories for like after Return of the Jedi.
Sure.
And now everyone's either gotten a lot older, or they've already passed, or all these kind of things. And even having like Rey, like anything could happen.
Sure.
They weren't. No one was expecting him to pass after being casted. So like,
it was what, a month and a half after we saw him, and he looked so vibrant and full of life.
It's just crazy. So like, I really hope that like, they don't just say like, oh well, all these characters with like Finn and Rey, like, we can't touch them. We're not gonna do those for a while or anything. I'm glad that they're doing the Rey movie.
Me too.
I hope they use Finn. I hope they use Poe. I hope if
John's willing to come back.
I hope they use any of that and like help build them up, and Rose, and stuff like that.
That's one of some of my favorite things to just think about what could be when it comes to Star Wars. I mean, obviously Ahsoka just added a whole lot to it, but I love the idea of thinking about what a new Jedi Order with Rey could be like, and what differences, what she could learn from what's in those books, not just the successes of the Jedi, but the failures.
Yeah.
And what can do. It could be really fun. So,
and
I hope it's awesome.
Tossing in animation there gives you a lot of leeway to be able to still tell stories of characters that aren't with us anymore. The actors aren't with us. But
when Leia shows up in Rebels, none of us are like, well, this is bullcrap. Who's that voice?
No. I love that. And like, there's so much stuff you can do. Like, let the animation do some animation. Don't be afraid to dive into animation stories and stuff too. So. Free Range Chicken says, perhaps the mother is the highest mother of the Night Sisters. Chaotic Night Sister Mannequin is a great opposite to the father's order and control. Yeah, so like having that idea, we have the great mothers that we've already been seeing, and Mother Talzin. There's a lot of mother. It could be interesting of like the mother of the father is actually more Night Sistery within the Force, and that kind of brings that element right into it.
Dave Filoni is a big Lord of the Rings fan. A lot of people remember from the movies or from the Lord of the Rings books. The Agronath is it's those big giant statues they pass by in Fellowship of the Ring, and they're on the former borders of Gondor, and they're denying the East and Sauron, like the hands are up, come no further, So maybe the Mortis Gods are doing something similar with their hands outstretched, no further, come no here, don't come here, and whatever Baylan's looking out to, or what they're looking out to, is a force they're stopping at the borders of this galaxy, So there could be definitely something there. I'm super open to it. I personally just didn't like Abeloth as a I don't know if I'm even saying it correctly, as a character that the other characters were interacting with, just because I'm not a fan of Force monsters, and I'm a fan of characters that make human choices. Like Palpatine's as close to a Force monster I want to get to personally, but I could change that. I'm really open to having my opinion changed on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I mean, a character like Abeloth is nothing to me compared to a character like Dooku from Tales of the Jedi.
Sure. Like I don't know that the
Yeah.
Abeloth kind of creature character thing,
Sure.
but I think the idea, like I don't know much about the Mortis Gods either.
Yeah.
But I think it could be interesting of having, like, we've had Mother mentioned how many times in Star Wars this whole time it's been in front of us that there must be a Mother, and it's tied to like Night Sister magic
Maybe,
in some
yeah.
way, and I think that's a neat way of twisting that. I'd be behind that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else we're looking for, so
Yeah. I don't know.
Space Tacos said, just want to say how much I love both channels. I rely on super nerds like y'all and Kyle Katarn for all the sweet
Kyle.
Star Wars trivia. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Space Tacos.
Yeah, I mean, well, we've invested a lot of time into these stories and a lot of love into these stories. So if we can use that to help other people out when they're trying to fill gaps, then that's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for watching.
Appreciate it. Alpha JPEG says, how do you think that Huyang shacked up with Ahsoka?
Ooh,
So how did we bring those two together?
Yeah, that'd be a really interesting story, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to. I don't know how Sabine and Zeb hooked up with the Rebels crew. I don't think it's something that I absolutely need answered or anything. I think it makes sense that like a former Jedi and a former Jedi droid might one day hook up. Like she might be like, Saber needs a new, flitzer. Where am I gonna get a flitzer? And they go like, you got a flitzer? It's like, well, there's a guy back here talking about flitzers. Hello, I'm you. I don't know. There's a lot of reasons that they could have hooked up, but I do like that. I love that he's there, and I also loved the moment Ezra met him.
Yeah.
Because I know those characters well enough, and it's just always fun to be like, they never met. So, but yeah, how do you think it happened? I don't know.
I don't know. They did have an implication that the ship has been kept by Huyang more so than Ahsoka.
Yeah.
There was, at least that's how I took some comment that they had during the show.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's related to that. Maybe he escaped on that cruiser and somehow they met up. It would have to been after Rebels,
Yeah.
But
Sure.
I don't know when. I think it would be a cool story.
It'd be a good like comic book story, maybe.
Maybe. I thought that it was
Or
a
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi, maybe. Yeah. It'd be probably more Ahsoka-y, though. But it could be like Tales of the Jedi and it's Huyang. But it's like the whole season is just Huyang with other Jedi.
Yeah.
Right? So like you're getting these little tales of these other Jedi like all starting. Like you get to see like Yoda build his first lightsaber. You get to see Dooku build his first lightsaber. But it's all from like Huyang being like a catalyst of it all. Like that could be kind of cool.
I think Huyang, like the potential for that character is so great because he has all the elements of like a D&D scholar or like a mage-like character, but he doesn't delve into the supernatural. Like he can't delve into the supernatural. It's literally like he's not a living thing, so he can't deal with that. But like you have lines where it's like, well, people don't just disappear into nothing, right? And he goes, no, well, not normally, because in his head he's going, of course not, but. Sometimes I've heard, like sometimes Jedi die and they just disappear. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Sometimes we burn them and they disappear. I don't know what happened. I love that character.
No, I think Huyang's great.
And
so
David Tennant's so good at it.
Yeah.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
All right. Let's see. What's next here? Dustin says, getting closer to the sequel timeline, how would you start to connect the storyline into these shows?
Oh, man, how would I? I mean, I think that you could have the elements of the Imperial Shadow Council. I mean, we've already seen it, right? There's a Hux on that Shadow Council.
Sure.
So I think that you have Thrawn, the brilliant tactician, maybe play on the idea of this isn't a big deal. The New Republic thinks it's not a big deal. We don't want to rush into another war. So maybe you have Thrawn start to set up elements of the First Order, or at least elements that Palpatine takes over. Or maybe,
sure.
I'm not really sure exactly, but you could go maybe that route.
Yeah, because we need to see the First Order being created. We have that Shadow Council, right? So like, I don't know. I don't know what the best way of really gelling those together is. You still have things where like maybe you can connect some of the council into things of Exegol and Palpatine. Like there was a mention of Project Necromancer, I think. Necromancer. Yeah. So like maybe there's some things there that we can start working on to kind of connect into it. It could be interesting to have an underlying story because we don't know exactly what Ahsoka, like what her story was all the way up into like getting the sequel trilogy and stuff. But
certainly in the Mandalorian season 3 we saw Pelion, who in the EU was Thrawn's like right hand man commander, and he even says like the thing we need to focus on is the imminent return of Grand Admiral Thrawn. And now that we watch Ahsoka, you kind of have to go like, how does he know? How does he know Thrawn's coming back? Like, there's no connection to the other galaxy or anything. He shouldn't, So I
think they're connected with Morgan, right? Morgan Elspeth. Like, there's a connection there. Because the only thing that we know of is that the Great Mothers gave her dreams to see and know what was coming. So
I mean, Morgan,
there has to be a connection between her and at least Pelion.
Yeah,
right?
Morgan is like Ahsoka says, "Where is your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?" Morgan hasn't necessarily had anything to do with the Empire, right?
Well, I mean, why is that her master too, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't see her in like Rebels or anything. So was there a connection from before?
Maybe.
Or was there a connection from like the dreams?
I kind of like the idea that Pelion just like he just like is keeping up like, oh yeah, he's coming back, but he has no idea.
Sure. I mean, maybe it's similar to like
just a bluff.
It could be similar to the like what Hera's dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Where like we're gonna find Ezra and Thrawn could come back, and they're like, they've been gone for years. There's no way they're coming back. You know, like they don't believe it. So maybe that's the same thing. Pelion's holding hope. Like we don't know where Thrawn is. We don't know he's dead. He will be back and he will lead us.
Maybe.
You know, like maybe it's even that related. But yeah, I don't know.
I'm excited for someone that is a much better storyteller than I am to try.
I agree. Matthew said he was very happy to see Claudia Black in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I hope someday you guys might react to Farscape.
Yeah, I never watched Farscape. I'd said in the reaction at one point, it's like, well, I never watched or did anything with Farscape, but there was a Jedi Outcast mod that was like a bunch of models and skins that I downloaded, and it was like, Vader and Dooku, and it was this amazing modder and skinner that like made everything look amazing. And he just also liked Farscape, so he had like 5 or 6 Farscape characters in there. I remember being like, "Who's this? This person's cool." Like playing with him a little bit in the mod,
Gotcha.
So that's the only reason I know anything about Farscape.
Man, sorry. In the middle of that, I just had a thought.
Yeah.
About when I said about Huyang and seeing like Yoda build his lightsaber and all that kind of stuff. I just remembered that there was like a line that Huyang says like, "This is like the most action I've seen in a like test or whatever since Master Yoda got his lightsaber."
Yeah.
He said something along those lines, and I'm like, oh man, what could it have been? Like, damn, now I need that.
Little like rebellious teen Yoda, like, screw you.
Yeah, right. Oh man,
powerful I am.
But thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that,
so
and maybe some point, Farscape will be a thing we
never know.
Check out.
You can go to blindwave.com and put it in your recommended.
Boxing Love says, I would love to see Kanan as a Force Ghost next season. Do you think that's possible? Given the end of the series that we had, like, I think it's possible. Is it something that would want to have happen? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It could be something that could be fun to do. It just depends on what the reason is, right? I love in Rebels. Hera has like a moment where like she reaches and like feels like her shoulder and like senses like Kanan there, and it's not like a Force Ghost in the way that you have like Luke talking to Obi-Wan, or Obi-Wan talking to Qui-Gon or any of that kind of stuff. But we at least see it, and like I just like having that kind of element there where like for the audience especially, and for Hera, there's a feeling and there's emotion there, and I really like that. Like I don't want it to just be there just to be there. So it really depends on the reason, and I think there could be good reasons, especially if it has to do with like Jason or something, maybe, Yeah. There could be some really cool stuff they do there.
That could be cool.
I could be crying and be like, no.
I want to see that. I want to see you cry.
But I would say, especially if we're in a place of strong force, like power, I think is the times that like maybe like the veil's the thinnest and like things like that could come through, where it makes it not a thing where it's like, well, now Kanan can just like talk to Jason anytime he wants or something, But because we've gone to maybe like Dagobah, or maybe because we've gone to what's the planet called? I always want to call it Paradis, but that's like AOT.
Peridia, I think.
Peridia, right? Yeah. Isn't Paradis AOT?
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep wanting to say Paradis, and I'm like, that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe there's like that strong thing that Baylan is feeling allows to have like that Force Ghost kind of element happening and stuff too.
Yeah.
But I don't
Agreed.
know. But I think we talked about during the reaction and stuff is like some of these things, like I don't want it to just be able to happen all the time. And, like there was a big point of like, well, Qui-Gon kept his form in the Force, right? Like it taught Obi-Wan, taught Yoda because of their communication with him and stuff, where I don't want it to just be like, well, just anybody is able to do it.
Yeah.
You can say the chosen one, Anakin, that's why he's able to connection to the Father or whatever it is. But, you start getting like Luminara and you get Kanan, you get Ki-Adi-Mundi, and you get all these guys like, oh, they can all just be Force Ghosts now. It's like, well, I think it needs to be something special sometimes,
Well, yeah, I agree. It needs to be, like, I always think back at Yoda's line, like, what's in there? Only what you take with you. Like, I think Force Ghosts manifest and come to people not because
individuals,
they have their own agenda, but because of what people bring to them, So what somebody needs is what calls them. So if Kanan is needed, maybe he'll answer that call. There was also kind of that thing where it's kind of implied that one Loth Wolf and Kanan, doom, there's a connection there too. So even not just Force Ghost stuff, maybe you can have something like that.
Sure.
Later.
A Loth Cat.
Yeah.
Doom.
Yeah.
Be great. And then I have one more, I think, from Matthew here. Nope. Thomas. Hi, guys. Big fans. Been watching since Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Your discussion just made me realize, would Huyang be aware of Grogu? I think he would be. He may not know that he's still around, though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Also, I don't know. It depends on what Huyang... At what point does Huyang know of the younglings?
Right. Huyang might not know you until you've built a lightsaber, and
Yeah.
then he makes room in his processor for
Yeah.
you.
Until you're at that point in your training and
Yeah.
stuff. Because like, there might be a lot of Jedis that start off younglings and
Yeah.
they never make it that
They
point,
don't
you
make
know?
it. Yeah.
So I don't know if he has a library of just all the Jedis, but it seems like he has a library of like lightsabers. So I would say it's possible he doesn't because of that specifically.
Sure.
Just because he was too young for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Could be an avenue for a fun story.
Yeah. Matthew says Senator Ziono reminds me so much of Borsk Phalia from
yeah.
Legends.
Yeah.
I'm going to love to hate him.
Yeah.
I don't know that character.
A Galactic Alliance character, like on the side of the rebels, but not always the most pragmatic character like Ziono is. I talked about it in the reaction. Like, it's easy, I think, to hate someone like Ziono, but if we try to get on his side and think, why is he feeling this way? I think that it's not too difficult to see a galactic civilization that so easily applauded the introduction of fascism to be very wary about where they send their armies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not really getting to see his side entirely.
No.
We're already on Hera's side, knowing what's true.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it really goes with that idea too, where it's like he is complaining about things that we've seen.
Yeah.
But she has no evidence of any of these great claims, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard for him to be like, where's this Jedi? Where is this, where's any of this information that you're sharing? Where's any pictures, video, anything you got? And they got nothing. So it's like, how can I believe, like, if you just showed up and it's like, Aaron, I was abducted by aliens and they had lightsabers on their UFO.
Sure.
And then, like, I woke back up in my yard. And I'm like, okay, well, where's your evidence of that? And I'm like, well, I don't have any. It's like, well, that sounds ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous.
But if, like, there was a video camera that followed you and everyone else got to see it, but you didn't show me, then I look like a fool being like, Eric, you're lying to me, Like, it's... So, yeah, I get you. It's definitely a...
I mean, he's a skeptic. And, skeptics are, think of a Christmas movie. And there's the one where it's like, Santa's not real, you crazy person. And it's like, oh, that character. You imagine he said Santa's not real, But when we apply skepticism to our own life, it's one of the most reliable pathways to truth, as opposed to something like just blind belief or faith or something where, faith is the evidence of things unseen. But skepticism is like, don't believe things until you have good reasons to, right?
Sure.
Because there's a lot of people out there that could trick you, or that you can accidentally start believing something that's not true. You know,
Yeah.
QNO might not be the best character that I put like the skeptic. Look at him and praise him, you know.
Sure.
But that's just because we, the believers, know what's going on. Right?
And then, like, my emotional response watching it when I first see him, like, screw this guy, you know, like, come on, it's all real. But he doesn't know that at this point, you know. So. And he doesn't have enough belief in, like, Hera and them either. And he's trying to do what he thinks is best for the galaxy, I guess, right?
And, you know, not for nothing, but sometimes it's cool when you have characters have an arc. And he is set up to have an interesting arc if they do anything with him. To go from one thing to another. You know, you could do something interesting there. And then, just like Bail Organa, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
As all things don't really end super well.
Now I'm thinking about him. I'm thinking about how cool it would be to like get into like the future of things and have Kaz involved and stuff too. Oh man,
I know, dude. Hell yeah, dude. Have Christopher Sean play Kaz in the New Jedi Order film.
Yeah, like in the future. Why I don't know why he must be a pilot.
Of course he would.
Right?
Why wouldn't he? Why would there not be like a, you know, like a Skywalker Squadron? You know, and there's Poe's on there. Ray's on there, and Kaz is on there.
Yeah,
he has his fireball.
Goodwill says, if/when Sabine builds her own lightsaber, does she make a new Darksaber? Would make sense that Huyang would know how. So the last Mandalorian Jedi made the Darksaber, right?
Tar Vizsla, yeah.
So would she go along with a similar idea? And would that be a interesting idea?
I could definitely see it happening. My dislike of the look of the Darksaber aside, I think that would make sense, but I would just want it to mean something to her. You know, the Darksaber did mean something to her, but that was because it meant something to all of Mandalore.
Sure.
And she had a very complicated relationship with all of Mandalore. So if you're going to do something like that, just make it happen for a good reason, you know, and not just to like be like, oh, isn't that cool? I mean, sometimes isn't that cool is fun.
Sure.
But it doesn't evoke a feeling to me sometimes of a more whole feeling. So I, right now, love the idea that she's using, you know, Ezra's lightsaber. Ezra trained by Kanan, who was her first teacher of the lightsaber. You know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. While on the topic of Sabine, too, I saw some people asking, oh, man, if I can find it again, but what was the wording of it? It just escaped me, so I'm trying to think of what it was now.
Sabine.
Yeah, it's about Sabine. Would Sabine know about Mandalore being, like, re-inhabited?
Oh,
and I'm in my mind, I'm like, I don't think necessarily yet. Like, we know it happened. Trying to figure out what the timeline of all of it kind of fitting in with. Like, it may not have gotten to her yet with things that she knows yet. So,
I mean, I think that where we see her in the story is her focus is on Ezra and nothing else, really, you know? I mean, it's one of the reasons that Ahsoka is kind of afraid of teaching her, because she sees that singular drive and focus, and someone that's been incredibly hurt by, you know, her family turned on her originally, right?
Yeah.
Like, they joined the Empire over her. There's a lot of darkness and grief in there, so maybe the focus on Ezra is kind of a way of her trying to center herself. And now that that's happened, I mean, obviously she's not in the galaxy anymore, but I could see that being something we go on. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be cool to have her involved with that at some point, but if she doesn't know it yet, I don't think it's too crazy or anything.
Yeah.
It was a smaller group of Mandalorians that went to go take it back, and I don't know what all they've got done and what all they've spread around the galaxy of being back at it or anything too. So I think we'll just see where that story goes. Plus, also, a lot of them, or at least Mando and Grogu are over on Navarro, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep, at their homestead.
At the homestead.
Gonna live happily ever after.
Alpha says, I want Luke to train Ahsoka, Cal, Merrin, Jason, Ezra for his school, but do you think they all need to die because of a handful of students Kylo took out?
I mean, it's possible, but that doesn't mean that those stories won't mean anything. I mean, I love the prequel Jedi. I love Plo Koon and Kit Fisto and the younglings at the gathering. I love those stories, and I want more of those stories. And just because I know they all died in Order 66 doesn't mean that I don't want it, or I'm not like, I don't care. They're all gonna die anyway. It's like that's true of every character, almost that's ever existed.
Sure,
they will eventually die, yes, but seeing new parts of their life is still exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know the fate of Luke, but it doesn't mean I don't want him to like show up in any more stories or anything,
no, of course
right?
not.
Like,
yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah.
All right, Gonk, what other questions do we have? Or actually, what time is it? 4:10?
4:10.
Should we move on over to our...
Let's try. We can try to do one more question before we move on.
Well, that's not a question, Gonk, but I can mention just that Thomas is...
Oh.
As a side note, I kind of need Clark Gregg in Star Wars.
Oh.
Is there a good character for him, or should he just be Space Coulson?
Sorry, I couldn't resist. That dark, shadowy corner is just too good.
I love Clark Gregg.
Yeah.
I don't have a character in mind that I think he would be good with.
Maybe like a droid voice might be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like a more bloodthirsty protocol droid or something. I don't know. That's just I don't know why that immediately came to my head, but yeah, love Clark Gregg too. I hope to see him in more things.
Yeah. I don't have a character for him in mind, but yeah, I would love to see him more too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's find one more question about towards Ahsoka and stuff
that
we can discuss here. How do you compare them? Garachi, how about this? How do you compare book new canon Thrawn and Ahsoka Thrawn, or do you separate the two?
Nope, they're all the same character for me.
We've recently went through the first trilogy, not like the first Heir to the Empire trilogy, but the first trilogy of the new canon Thrawn books.
Yep.
We discussed those. We've watched Rebels. Now we have Ahsoka here. It's like you just kind of have all those pushed into one character.
I do that with all of Star Wars.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, it's very easy for me. I think the one thing from Ahsoka that you could be like, I don't know if Book Thrawn would say that, was when he's for the Empire, towards the end in this last episode. But I can also very much see that book character saying it for the right reasons, for what he wants the Empire to be, which is something strong that he can use to defend his people,
I think what will really do it for me will be where we go with his character. The book one definitely had him feel like he's doing what he needs to within the Empire to make sure that his Chiss ascendancy planet will be in good shape. It will be safe, right? Sure. Like he wants to push the TIE Defender program because he doesn't think the Star Destroyer is a good idea, because also that's a danger towards his planet that he's from, right? Whereas TIE Defenders would be one. It does seem to be a better idea because it definitely, you could have those everywhere instead of just one location. But the idea is that it won't just destroy the planet. Yeah. Right. So, but depending on where he goes with this, it seems like he's bringing a bunch of possible zombies into our galaxy,
or reawakened nightsisters and zombies.
Yeah. So what is the plan with that? And is that going to be for the better of the galaxy? Because I feel like he usually has a really good plan of what he wants. So I'm really excited to see where they go with that. And I think that will make my determining factor of how it fits in with the books. And then Rebels, Thrawn. And we haven't read the other trilogy yet.
The Ascendancy, I'm excited for that.
It'd be fun to get into those at some point.
We had little elements of it seems to be some type of Chiss civil war brewing and all that stuff. So yeah, I really want to get into those in the interim. The next we see Thrawn in live action, maybe we'll have read those. Yeah.
So, and then I'll cover this last one. That's a super chat, which says Riz King, who says, "Do you think we'll see Captain Pelion in season 2?"
Ooh, yeah. I would hope so, or maybe the Heir to the Empire movie, if that's what we're going to be going with. Yeah,
whatever story we're progressing into, I would hope his return to the galaxy would then bring Captain Pelion into that, and then you kind of have them together like they did in the old books, right?
I mean, if you ask me though, which one would you rather have, Captain Pelion or Eli Vanko? I don't know. I love Eli. I do like
Eli. Eli was really good. I don't really know Pelion. I didn't read the old books, and all I know of him is him being like, "But we got to prepare for this," you know. And
but the cool thing about the EU is that he is really the only true, when it all said and done, the Empire completely is destroyed. The remnants, Pelion is the last warlord of the Empire left, and he joins the Galactic Alliance. So the Empire, or at least Pelion and his Star Destroyers and his people that are under him, are on the good side, you know? So I always liked that for the character. Like, years and years after the Thrawn stuff, he was the face of the Empire, or at least the remnants of the Empire that they burned away all the real bad stuff they do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it'd be cool if Eli comes in, because at least we're back in the galaxy. Thrawn's back in the galaxy that Eli's in.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're going to go and see, like, the Chiss planet or something like that. Or
Sure.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. The New Republic and the old EU, it breaks too when it becomes the Galactic Alliance, which I always like that name, because it kind of stems from the Rebel Alliance.
All right. Well, guys, that's probably it for our Q&As on Ahsoka and whatever else we talked about in that whole
Yeah,
segment.
we covered a lot with that. Yeah. So let's bring our focus. We'll narrow that focus, and we're going to narrow it to a single character.
One character.
Now. Yes.
We're going to be talking about Kanan Jarrus. And
I was going to say Caleb Doom.
No. We're not going to talk about Caleb.
Our narrowness failed.
We're going to talk about Kanan.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about Caleb and Kanan.
Yeah, we can.
That's okay.
Yep.
But yeah, we're going to talk about our favorite moments from that.
Uh-huh.
I think I cheated a little bit within mine, because I put my favorite moments, I have a little bit more broad, encompassing sometimes 3 things.
What? We're supposed to do our top 5.
I have 5. I have 5.
I have 9.
What?
No, I have 5, and then I suspect that you're going to steal some from me, so I have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have a lot.
Okay. Well, then I can mention mine in my broader sense and not go into the.
Yeah.
I bet you have the more specific ones.
Some.
Maybe.
We'll
see.
My favorite part was all of Rebels. Ha!
No, you went really broad. You did a good job there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what do we want to start with? Start with 5. Work our way up.
Number 5.
I was debating on how I wanted to do this, but I think my 5th spot is actually from the book that we read.
Ooh, interesting. I don't have any from the book.
No?
No. I like the book, but I don't have any from the book.
I really liked, and we'll talk about this, but it's the very beginning of A New Dawn. And there is a bunch of Jedi all talking to Obi-Wan about this device, and you use this device to call the Jedi home.
Yeah.
And then they're being like, well, where's home? It's like, well, to Coruscant. It's like, but why? And it's like, well, for... And then, like, Kanan's like, for unknown reasons. And everyone's like, ha, 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 unknown reasons. That's a dumb answer. Yeah. And then Obi-Wan's like, best of answer I've ever heard.
No, he's right.
And I
boo him.
And I really like that. Yeah. But my favorite part of that was him being like, but Master, you could summon Jedi here. Could you also send them away? And Depa was there and was like, oh, I'm sorry. He says that things.
Yeah.
But I just picture Obi-Wan, like, doing his little beard thing, being like, no. I believe we could, And I think it's a fun idea of how many times do kids ask, like, weird questions that adults don't think of?
Yeah.
And then it triggers being like, huh.
Truly wonderful, the mind of a child.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah, the beacon.
And Obi-Wan has that kind of stuff happen, but I love that, like, Kanan possibly triggers that thought to Obi-Wan that in episode 3, whenever they're summoning all the Jedi there to kill them, he's like, no, let me change this because I know I can make it send away. Yeah. So I just thought that was a really neat thing.
I really did like that moment. And I like Caleb is like, well, okay, so then you use the beacon to tell us to stay away. Then what? And Depa's like, you'll have to find the answer for yourself.
Yeah.
And then
perhaps the answer will show itself in a different way.
And then
like that,
the rest of the book happens. And what does he find? Hera. And the rebels.
So like that was one where I'm like, it was fresh in my mind, so I may have recency bias and stuff
That's
too.
A good one.
But I started looking through like a lot of Rebel stuff and whatnot. But I really just like that. Like, man, he could have triggered the whole reason that some Jedi didn't die.
Sure. Okay, I'll go with my number 5. My number 5 is Kanan versus the Grand Inquisitor. Their final battle. Ezra goes tumbling over, and Kanan thinks that he's dead. And Freddie Prinze just nails all of these lines. That was a mistake. The Grand Inquisitor's, why? Because you have no one left to die for you. No, because I have nothing left to fear. What a great, great response. That whole fight is one of my favorites in Rebels, just because of the way he's using Ezra's lightsaber, the way honestly, it might be my favorite use of the Inquisitor lightsaber in a battle. Really? I love the way the Inquisitor, like, will put the saber in front of him and fly back, that type of thing. But I love that response. And then obviously, if I am going to get 2 or 3 things out of it, the thing that comes later, it's like, you're right, I was a coward, but now I know there's something stronger than fear, far stronger, the Force. Let me show you how strong it is. Like, Kanan's never been more badass than in that fight, because we'll talk about this throughout this entire conversation, but like Kanan's main thing is his hang-ups of being a master and the absolute fear he has of failing the people around him. And in that moment, he gets to just be Caleb, like at his like core for a second, and just like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I know I'm going to kill that guy.
Yeah.
Great moment.
No, you did the way that I was doing it, because that's one of the things I was looking at was defeating the Inquisitor, because I also love, like you kind of mentioned, like him using Ezra's saber. Yeah. Like he's like, give me that. And the way he uses that is so cool. This was like my number.
Why didn't I think of that?
It's like my number 4. Yeah, Ezra's like,
really?
why didn't I think about that? I love the way he uses that.
Yeah.
I love the quote of like nothing to fear. I love that he like stabs in to the circle of the Inquisitor saber and cuts it. Yeah. Like all those moments. Even like there's a point when like Ezra like wakes up and they're like, "Are you okay? Is Kanan okay?" And he's like, "He's doing great." Yeah. He like looks up at Kanan just like taking on the Inquisitor and stuff. And no, that was definitely one of my favorite moments. And it's the end of season 1 of Rebels, and it's just it's a really good Kanan moment.
Yeah. I mean, Kanan is. He really defines himself by how he reacts to fear. What he went through in Order 66, thinking that Ezra was dead there, and he doesn't fall into anger because his Padawan's gone. He trusts in the Force. He does what he was taught and what he was trained for, and he doesn't give in to fear there. He uses the Force to become more powerful, but the Grand Inquisitor gives in to fear and kills himself because he's so afraid. So it's a great moment. Yeah, a defining moment in Rebels, and I'm glad that it's in. So that was your number 4.
That's my number 4. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. What do you want to go to your number 4?
Sure.
This is my number 3. No.
No. Number 4. It's a small moment, but it's one of my favorites when I'm rewatching. I'm trying to remember exactly what episode. I can't think of the name of the episode, but Ezra and Kanan are having a conversation. Kanan says, sometimes I think I have nothing left to teach you. Ezra is like, no, that's not true. Kanan's like, well, my own Jedi training was limited, so I there's not much I can. And Ezra just like, I'm not talking about the Force. I'm talking about being a good person. Like that's the most important thing that he gave to Ezra. It's awesome that the elements of what Kanan learned as a Jedi was able to be passed on, but this was a kid with no parents.
Sure.
And him being able to look at Hera and Kanan in order to not just be a rebel and a freedom fighter, but being someone that can, love people and find reasons to fight that isn't just revenge or anger, But it's not about fighting what we hate. It's about saving what we love.
Yeah.
Right? So I love that moment. I love that Ezra is the one to say, like, no, teacher, let me teach you about something.
No, I get you.
I love that moment so much. It makes me emotional every time I see it.
There's a lot to be said about the way, like, Ezra attaches to Kanan and, like, has a lot of, like, the way Kanan is, like, is how he learns to be, right? When I was looking through trying to figure out what my favorite moments were, there's a moment when it's towards the end of season 1. They're at the bottom of a radio tower. They were trying to send a message out, and they're all up at the top, and he stabs it, and the Inquisitor comes down. He goes, "What are you doing here?" And Kanan's like, "You're clever. Figure it out."
Figure it out.
And later on in Twilight the Apprentice, there's a part whenever Vader comes up, and he's like, "Why are you here?" Or something along those lines. I forget. And Ezra responds with like, "You're smart. Figure it out." And I was like, there's so many mirrors of like Ezra learning from Kanan and being like him, and
found family.
It fits really well. And even reading through the book that we did with New Dawn, like there's times when like that feels like Kanan, but also Ezra just feels so similar to Kanan with like the way he's learned from him and stuff too. And it's great.
Yep.
All right. Well, my number 3. So when I started this, I first started like, what are some of my moments that I can just like, what do I think of?
What comes
I think of,
immediately
like, Kanan
to
and
mind?
stuff?
Yeah.
And we keep mentioning it too at various times. It's the slingshot hallway.
Yeah, I have that as an alternate, but yeah, I love that so much.
I love that. I don't remember exactly which episode it's in, but they're inside like an Imperial like Star Destroyer or something like that, and there's like those doors are slowly shutting.
The blast doors. Yeah. Close the blast doors.
And they push Ezra, and then Ezra grabs and throws Kanan, and they take out stormtroopers through the way, and they get to the end, and I'm like, it just...
Kanan like cuts a hole in the blast door, and then it crushes us too, you know? And it's one of the few times Rebels goes hardcore with John Williams. Da, 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 you know?
So
Great stuff.
I love that, and it's not... I don't think it's... You get tons of times when you see, like, really cool force from an individual. Yeah. But this is, like, a cool teamwork kind of moment.
Yeah,
And I don't feel like you get those cool teamwork.
It feels like a master and apprentice moment.
Yeah. And I just really like it.
They trust each other. They've trained with each other. And, like, they don't even have to, like, say what they're going to do. They just know what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking of that exact moment when in the last episode of Ahsoka where we're trying to get up to the
Push
Chimera.
Me.
Yeah. Touch me. Yep. So that's your number 3?
That was my 3.
My number 3 is I need a 22 pickup.
Oh, yeah?
What's a 22 pickup? Care to let me in on the secret? Kid, I'm about to let everybody in on the secret. Yeah, dude, I love that moment. Like, how often do you get the because I certainly felt it the first time I watched it. I know that the other guys felt it. We went through with in the reaction, they felt it like you don't know Kanan's a Jedi until that moment.
The reveal of a new Jedi and stuff like that too.
It's such a great moment. It's such a great response. It's really well written. Kanan steps out, and even before he puts his lightsaber together, he like dodges two bolts. He does
like the Anakin kind of thing, right? Where it's like, what are you doing down there, Obi-Wan?
Yep.
Like that kind of moment.
The Wookiees are like, whoa, and Callus is like, concentrate all fire on the Jedi. It's a great moment. You don't get a lot of those where you have a secret Jedi show up,
No.
Yeah.
No. That was a really good one. I almost put it on mine. Yeah. I think I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with these ones instead.
That's one of my, what do you think of first when you think of Kanan? That was one of mine.
That's one of yours?
Yep. So number 3. I have one other of those on my list too.
Gotcha. This one, number 2 for me, I almost didn't put on.
Okay.
But after rewatching the scene, I really enjoyed it. It is I always call it the being knighted by the Inquisitor, right?
Ooh,
that moment.
Okay, yeah.
So like he's down inside like the temple and he's fighting like the Jedi guards, and I the fight and stuff is okay. Like it does an okay job at everything. And as I was watching it, I was like, this is okay, but it might not be my favorite scene. Yeah. But then it gets to the end and stuff too, and he like says like, you can't fight forever. And Kanan just has this line where he's like, I know I can't fight, but I can pass on everything I know and do my best for him kind of thing. And then like, he picks it up and he's like, I knight thee, Kanan Jarrus. And I'm like, man, I love this.
It's amazing.
Like,
dang it, you took my number 1.
Is that your number 1?
I love that because it's not like Kanan isn't being knighted by anybody. He's doing it to himself. Mm-hmm. He's telling himself like, hey, all you can do is all I can do is what I've done. Yeah, like that's all I can do. I can't. I wish I could do more for Ezra, but all I can do is what I've done.
And I can't fight forever. Yeah. I can't fight the Empire on my own.
And that's the lesson he needs to learn, to realize like that's what it means to be a Jedi, to be a master, to be a knight, to take on a Padawan. And it's very the Lothal Temple's strange. Mm-hmm. Right, because
it has layers and stuff.
Because I don't believe the Grand Inquisitor's spirit is there doing anything. He is looking at an enemy that was once something that he aspired to be, a Jedi Knight, and the Force is much like it showed Luke as Vader in the cave of Dagobah. It shows my greatest enemy being the person that is the fist of the Jedi. Like, you need to cut down this apprentice because you're going to fail him and he will fall to the dark side. So I'm going to go kill him, which that's all stuff that's happening in Kanan's head. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I that's one of my favorite moments because how often do you get someone that knights themselves and it feels worthy?
Sure.
Yeah.
Because it's either through him or the Force itself that's being like, you deserve this kind of thing, right?
Yep.
But he has to come to terms with it on his own.
And it's so powerful that the image of the Inquisitor, or I should say the Temple Guardians, like literally manifests itself to the Inquisitors and like scare them like phantoms, Like I love that so much. But yeah, the Lothal Temple has a lot of great, because again, like it it's the great Yoda line. What's in there? Only what you take with you.
Sure.
Ahsoka goes in there, and she sees Ahsoka. Why did you leave me? Don't you know what I've become? Like Ahsoka brings that with her. Kanan brings the baggage with her. Ezra, brings things with him. And then you also have Yoda that's able to use that connection to connect with people and to speak to Ezra and tell him to go to Malachor and that little wave to Ahsoka. It's one of my favorite episodes of Rebels, and one of my favorite Kanan moments is when he can deal with the things on his own and realize that he's holding himself back. It's not others holding him back.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got to find a new number 2 or number 1. I mean, so I want
to say real quick too.
Yeah.
We do have Nexus who says that Yoda knights him. He doesn't really knight himself.
Is that true?
I don't know.
That's not the way I watch it.
I just see it's been confirmed Yoda was giving them visions through the temple, but I don't know where that comes from necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know where you're getting that from next. I mean, you might be right, but again, I value what I got from it more than I do even sometimes a storyteller. So that's a very special moment for me, not because of something that Yoda says, but what Kanan says to himself. So I might just have that wrong, but don't care. Still love it.
Either way with it, I love the moment that it gives for it too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my number 2 then.
Yeah.
So you don't need to figure a new number 1, but what's your number 2? Or are you gonna move your 2 up to 1 and replace 2?
I'll move my 2 up to 1. I gotta have a new number 2. I got some alternates here. Okay, I got it. It's Jedi Knight, not Kanan's death. I mean, obviously, that's a great moment, but I felt like that was too easy of a moment to put on my list. Myself, it might be near your number 1. But when Kanan saves Hera from the stormtroopers, right? Hera's out of it, and she goes like, I'm going to be honest with you two. You're in terrible trouble. I wonder how he's going to get in. Kanan comes in the door, cuts the hole, the guy falls, and she's like, oh, I thought he'd come through the window. And then he comes in and throws the other guy through the window. I've always loved that moment. Like, Kanan has never been more of the Jedi in his prime than in that moment. Though we all know that what's coming is the culmination of that feeling. But
sure.
I love that interplay, and I love I love Hera and Kanan's relationship in that entire episode. I wish I could see you. Well, you could always see me. Like that, those moments, so good. But I just love that in terms of like choreography, blocking what's happening. I love that moment. So I guess that'll be my alternate to throw in there.
Alternate for 2?
Yeah.
All right.
I can. You know what? I'll also, because you stole my number 1.
What?
I'll also throw in.
No, you don't get to. You know why? You know why you don't get to? Because you just took over my number 1.
Shit.
My number 1, I put rescuing Hera. So I want to put this in here before you get to your alternates.
Yeah.
Because while yes, I was. This is when I was saying I was cheating, right? My rescuing Hera, I was taking from the point of 1. He looks at himself and says, "I should not lead this rescue mission."
Yeah.
And he has Ezra lead it,
Yep.
which I think is a great moment. Like I don't think you would have. I don't think Anakin would do that.
Yeah.
I don't think Ahsoka would do that. Like there's different Jedi that I don't think would like separate themselves, being like I'm too attached to this moment and I need someone else to do it, and to trust Ezra enough to know that we can rescue Hera.
Yeah.
He also had visions and stuff too, so like he kind of had ideas of what was coming and whatnot too. But like from there all the way to his sacrifice and stuff too, there's so many awesome Kanan moments that I couldn't really pick one. I love when he's like, and this may be mixture of Hera moment too, like you were just having, because I love that moment too. But I love when he's like, "Hey, I got you a gift," and she's like, "Kanan, this is mine." It's like, yeah. Then it's not really a gift. Like there's the Hera drugged up moment and stuff, and the chemistry that those two characters have and stuff up until the sacrifice moment is so awesome and so sad when you know what's coming and stuff too. I watch it with the kids and Melanie, and I start crying and stuff because but yeah, no. My number 1 was just not necessarily the sacrifice itself, but the whole rescuing Hera that he does, and like he shaves his head and everything and tries to make himself look like when they first met or whatever. Yeah. Right? Like it just
I love the blessing the Force gives him when it heals his eyes.
I love that moment when
for
the last second of his sacrifice he can see Hera one more time and then it's gone.
Yep. Good stuff. Thanks for making me cry with your number 1. What's my number 1? Well, it's taken.
Well, you got like 7 options over there.
Yeah, I got a bunch. My second one, I mean, it is a Kanan moment. It's also a Sabine moment. Kanan training Sabine to use a lightsaber. I think in my rewatches of Rebels, it is my number one scene. Obviously, I love Ahsoka and Vader, and
sure.
I love seeing Maul again and twin sons, and that's some great stuff. But when it comes to the characters and the character work being done, Sabine and Kanan training in the presence of Finn Rao and Ezra is, oh my God, it's some of the best stuff.
Sure. And like the roller coaster it goes on too, between like the anger and the
history lesson. The Jedi won the war.
Yeah. You can't rely on this. You can use
I wrote
your
it down.
tricks sometimes.
These tricks will amount to something, maybe save you from time to time, but they won't keep you alive in the long run. Only training and discipline will do that. And I mean, now that you see what, we now know through the Ahsoka show that Sabine has some type of strong connection to the Force.
Yeah.
Stronger than the average, maybe not as strong as, a Jedi might
not as strong as Ezra.
Yeah, exactly. Like that type of strength or connection might not be something that the Jedi of old would have picked out and be like, yep, take that baby,
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that training and discipline aren't worth anything,
Sure.
And Sabine continues that. And as much as I thought Sabine was a complete character without the addition of the Force, I'm super open to it, and I want to continue that. But if Kanan in this scene is the beginnings of having her on the road to becoming a Jedi, like, what a fantastic way to start.
Yeah.
Love that. And I just love his, like, you're not fighting me, you're fighting yourself, and you're losing. It's so great. It's a very animation, focused scene. Like it's really exaggerated. The characters are really screaming their guts out. They're flying and throwing each other, and Sabine is able to confront her fear. Kanan confronts his fear and is knighted. Like Ezra confronts his fear in Rise of Skywalker. It is the destiny of a Jedi to confront fear. Kanan being the catalyst to just like being almost like this, if she is the Mandalorian and he is the Jedi, and we know that there's a big, dark, deep history when it comes to that, being able to, it doesn't even feel like a lesson in the Force or the lightsaber. It's a lesson about yourself, Love that. Definitely, I know I had it at number 2, but one of my favorite scenes of all of Rebels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much. Love it so much.
I agree. I really liked it. I didn't put it on my list because I bet Eric will pick up
gotcha.
the Sabine training section.
Yep.
I didn't think you picked the knighting one as your number 1.
And
then I was like, rescuing Hera. Yeah. That might be one because he might be thinking of like the sacrifice. And
no, I love like Sabine puts her fiber whipcord around him. He just like cuts it, grabs it, brings her over. Mm-hmm. It's really, really cool.
Nope, it's great.
Well, did you have any alternates that you wanted? Like any macaroni prizes you wanted to give out for certain things?
That's not specifically. I mean, there's a lot of moments I really like with Kanan and stuff in general. Yeah. Like there's some great stuff with him and Maul. I love the moment when it's in Twilight of the Apprentice and Darth Maul's coming at Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's like, yeah, but you might have to take on him first
if you want to finish her fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's just standing there with the mask on and stuff, and it's just done really well. I like it a lot.
Maul, when he thinks he has the advantage and doesn't, is best Maul. Happens in Phantom Menace, happens in Twilight of the Apprentice, happens in Twin Sons, and the dude never learns.
Nope.
I love it. I love that moment of like Kanan has the Guardian mask on, which is connected with what we saw in the Lothal Temple. But just like you can't see his face, but you can feel his focus. You can see the shift of his weight, the saber back, and he's just waiting. And Maul's like, okay, you going to do something? What are you going to do? 4 moves, and he goes over the edge. Love it so much. Yep.
Grab his wrist and throw.
That's a great one.
All right. You give one.
One?
We haven't talked about the book, and we have 20 minutes left.
Okay. Now loves it. Okay. All right. It's the moment where Kanan and Rex are trying to get out of their Imperial installation, and Kanan's like, all right, I'll pull, you fire.
I'll pull, you
just like the old days.
Yeah.
Okay, Captain. and then the obviously the bookend of that, which is Rex falls behind and Kanan's like, I gotta go save my friend. I love that moment too.
I love the growth of Kanan and the clones because
Rex,
it's understandably how upset he is over the situation of Order 66 and what happened and what he saw, right?
Yeah.
And I love how that story progresses. And I love every time Rex goes like, just like the old days. Because like there's another time whenever they are fighting the AT-ATs and that they jump up there and do that when they're fighting. I love that too.
It made for a lot of fun moments, a lot of funny moments between those two. Anytime Kanan can be funny, I think is great. Yeah. Like when he meets Cham Syndulla, Hera's father, and he's like nervous. He's like, don't embarrass me. He's like, what do you mean embarrass you? And he's like, hello, sir. This is my, this is our crew, Sabine, Zeb, and Ezra. And he points to the wrong people. Yeah. I love those moments.
No, it's great. I love those so much.
Yep. Okay, well, there could be a ton of Kanan moments.
There's a ton.
We, sadly, it has come to an end. Maybe we'll have to do like a Kanan top 10 or top 5 part 2.
Part 2.
But that was fun. Love the character. Freddie Prinze Jr., I think, voiced him to perfection for me. So, and I hope one day, maybe like in a Tales of the Jedi or something, maybe we'll see a little bit more of Kanan one day.
I would love that. Love more Kanan. Yep. Or Caleb. All right. Well, we got some more Kanan in A New Dawn.
A New Dawn. The first book in the new canon that was like supervised by the story group or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't realize when we started that this was the first canon book. I was thinking that was Tarkin.
Canon book, yes.
Yeah. The first canon book.
First canon book. Yep.
So, what'd you think of A New Dawn as like a general?
Yeah, I mean, as I was reading it, it was one of those books where I'm like, I wonder if I was supposed to like watch Rebels before this or after this, because I one of my favorite moments in Rebels is realizing Kanan's a Jedi. I would never want to have read this book before that.
This did come out before Rebels, right?
Yeah, but I love what this book did to fill in the idea of Caleb Doom to Kanan Jarrus.
Sure.
I love the idea that he's kind of he left the hero behind, so he's kind of a sleazeball, and what kind of brings him back is not being a hero or a rebel. It's like kind of like this girl.
Sure.
I love his crush on Hera.
It starts from the voice. Yeah. Right. He's
like, the voice.
I heard that voice. Right? I gotta see what it's attached to, kind of thing.
Dude,
like,
Vanessa Marshall does that to you.
Yeah. Right. Also, having Mark Thompson do this book was really good too. Like Kanan was done really well. I think I think a lot of the Kanan Hera stuff was really good. I liked a lot of the extra characters with like Skelly.
Skelly was
an interesting character.
I like Skelly. Like he was almost kind of like the Clone Wars veteran that kind of like fails up in a way. Yeah. I liked him.
I liked Kanan's like boss mentor dude or whatever, the Okadiah or whatever.
Yep.
I thought he was interesting.
His like landlord.
Yeah, like his landlord, I guess. I don't
know, co-pilot.
Yeah, whatever. They work together at least anyway. But I wasn't super impressed with the Count Vidian.
Count Vidian? Count Vidian was funny to me, but not in like a good way. I liked what was happening, but he was a little corny to me. But damn if I didn't enjoy some of the scenes. Yeah. I also was like at some points he's so violent it was funny to me. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess so. He just felt like we can't use Vader or Grievous or any other used to be human, now cyborgy guys, so let's make another one. Sure. And I was like, all right. But I did get excited. I was going through and listening to it at one point, and they mentioned Sloane. And I was like, Sloane? Why does Sloane sound familiar? I know Sloane from something. Sloane. And I had to go and like look up like Ray Sloane. Who's Ray Sloane? I was like, oh, that's right. It's from Squadrons. And she shows up in Squadrons at one point. Or not one point. She's like a
This is her first official appearance. Yeah. So we are in the clear of like, well, what should we know about Ray Sloane? This is the first time people would have read about it.
I found out that the author of this like made Sloane and was like, after they finished, like, I think that she has room to like have more stories and stuff too. And I was like, okay, so that's cool. So I'm assuming that there's a lot more stories I don't know from here to Squadrons. But whenever they mentioned, I'm like, oh man. And I was like, that's when I started looking up, like, okay, when did Squadrons come out, and when did this book come out, and when did Rebels come out, and try to figure out like when things were released for everything too. So
I never really I need to, but I didn't really get into the story of Squadrons much. I know that she was in it, and I also know of her because a lot of my trivia studying with the sequel trilogy did dive into a little bit of some of the Aftermath books, and like she's a character in
she's
that
in
as
Aftermath.
Well. Yeah,
okay,
so
that'd be cool to have.
It's a character that has a long career with.
Because here, I think she's a captain, and then eventually she's gonna get to like admiral.
Admiral, yeah.
So I'd like to see some more of her journey and stuff too. But I thought her character in this was really good.
Yeah, I liked her. Yeah.
I liked her. I liked her, like, she's, like, new, and she's doing, like, what the Count says and stuff, too. But then, like, she gets to a point where she's like, should I be listening to Kanan?
Sure.
There's a message from the Emperor.
Yeah.
And, like, she has to, like, kind of turn on things and be like, I thought it was too good to be true. He was offering me too much and stuff like that, too.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I did like her character and her, I guess growth. I don't know. Her understanding of what the Empire kind of workings are.
Sure. I think that, what's the right word? I didn't have any bias towards her, but immediately when I saw the name, I'm like, oh, okay, pay attention, you know? But then I was just kind of like, well, she just, you know, there is some stuff there, but, you know, she's really okay sometimes with some of the stuff the Empire does, and then sometimes she's not. And I'm just like, hypocrite, you know?
Yeah.
But that makes for fun villains, you know? So, yeah, it was cool to have her in there. You know, the book, it wasn't necessarily my favorite just because I had a hard time kind of trying to imagine the setting, you know, this like a lot of it was kind of like in the same area with the mining and the stuff like that. And there's a lot of corporations and there's a lot of stuff to keep track of and a lot, you know, and then, you know, Vidian's coming in because, you know, it's like my least favorite part of Star Wars sometimes, you know? But like when Vidian like threw that chief into the acid, you know, and he was like, you know, decay more faster so I can, you know, I was like, man, this guy loves efficiency. So like there was parts of I was like, that's terrible. But like there's another part of me being like, this is silly.
Sure. Like sometimes like is it supposed to be cartoony evil kind of thing, right?
For me.
Which I mean can fit with Rebels and stuff too.
No,
but
sure,
I think that's
of
part of
course.
why like I'm like he was just kind of like it's like I felt like he was just kind of like we couldn't use Vader, so we used someone like this guy is evil, we can get rid of him and do all that kind of stuff.
No, you know, maybe I'm bringing some baggage into it, but like when I had heard about this is a Kanan Hera book where they met, I guess I let my imagination go a little bit too wild about, what could that be?
Oh, sure.
And it wasn't, and what we got was like, oh, okay. It was fun. I really enjoyed the relationship and the building between Hera and Kanan.
Sure.
I really loved seeing where Kanan was and how he gets there.
And I was really curious, too, to see how they end up getting together, right? How do we get Kanan and Hera on the Ghost together? Which also was like, you get the Ghost like in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then it's like gone for the whole book until you get to the very end again.
I know.
And I'm like, well, all right, that's fine, whatever.
Don't get me wrong. I sat through 10 seasons of Smallville. I'm like, when's this guy putting on the suit? You know? And it's at the very end, and he didn't even really put on the suit. It was CG. You know? I was like, oh, damn it.
So
I get it.
But the story between them and the things they have happen, and a lot of it, it has to do with like Kanan feeling attracted to her, right? Is a big part of that. That's kind of why
he's attracted to ladies, you know, like he's not a Jedi anymore, and he in his hiding he leaves a lot of what they value behind, and what he values is getting into some bar fights, having some drinks, and being with some ladies. Sure.
I did like the way I think it was Okadiah that described him, where it was like I think of the wording real quick here. I always viewed you as a man with nowhere to go, not a man running from something. And I thought that was an interesting thing.
That is
too,
good.
because like he wasn't that. It wasn't like he was running from anything. He had nowhere to go, so he wasn't like in trouble. No one knew who he was, right? He was Kanan Jarrus. He wasn't Caleb Doom. He's just in hiding, and he has no family. He has no nothing, you know. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. And then his Okadiah's like final words that he has towards Hera and stuff too kind of leads towards like this is a good kid. Yeah. You take him with you, he will do good things. And I was like I like that's why I think I liked Okadiah a lot. Yeah. And I'm like, good. Also he was kind of like, let me see you. You know, like he had that ladies man kind of thing too where he was like, let me see you one more time with my eyes. And Kanan's like, what is it? And he's like, not you, get out of the way.
Get out of the way.
Let me see her. No, it's like, all right, Okadiah. So but he had some good things that he was saying too within that and everything.
I really like Skellig. I just love that like his solution to almost everything is like, I'm gonna blow it up.
Sure.
He blew up like 12 things. He just kept blowing things up. Vidian just kept not getting blown up.
Yeah, right. Skelly gets into I felt so bad for the character because he is like he's like a scientist who figured something out, and then he's trying to share it, and everyone says it's a conspiracy, and then
he trusts that. Well, I'll just go to the
I'll go to the top guy, right? I'm gonna tell him, and then like it still gets pushed that it's a conspiracy, but then the top guy takes your information, being like, look, if this happens, the whole moon's gonna explode. And he's like, oh, well then I'll do that. And he's like, he's doing all the ideas that I said to warn them not to do. He's doing them, and like from that perspective of being that character, I'm like, that's gotta feel so bad of being like, how many people are gonna die? What's gonna happen? And it's all for greed. You know, like. So, like, I felt bad for Skelly, and, like, he spends half the book dying, you know? Like,
he does.
He's in such a bad shape, but I love the way he went out.
Yeah, me too.
And I was really curious on how the count, like, what's the end for the count going to be like? And I was kind of glad that he kind of got the last hurrah in that.
Yeah. No, I mean, Vidian, is how it's said, Vidian, I think, is count.
Vidian? Yeah.
Vidian. Yeah, like, I think that there's a lot of potential there, and maybe because he did seem like such a visual character in terms of like his intimidation factor and what he can be, you know, like imagine just reading about Grievous versus seeing him. Like it's not very impressive to hear like 4 lightsabers are spinning at once, but when you see it, you're like, holy crap, you know?
When you hear like, oh, his skin is made of cortosis or whatever, you know? It's like, oh,
but
okay.
I do love seeing more characters that are more into the cybernetic body horror of what Vader and Grievous and those types of characters can be. Wat Tambor, you know, those type of things, you know. So the
modders on Boba.
Yeah. Even that, like, I'm actually kind of excited. I thought that was a fantastic angle to go into
the way Finnick like has like that stomach thing. It's like pumping, you know.
No, I mean it's one of those things where like the original trilogy with Luke's hand, it's like, oh my God, he lost a hand. What happens? Like he gets a new one.
He gets a new one.
What's it look like? Like a hand. He puts sometimes it got shot. You know, it's like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But like this count, like it's a big deal what he put himself through. So like that's cool. I think that's really interesting. It's just the character itself wasn't necessarily the most fleshed out, or at the very least, I should say maybe I just had a hard time trying to imagine how that works. You know?
Yeah, I think for me too, and maybe it's because I didn't have the connection to any of the character or anything as much. But like they had like a twist on him too, that I was just kind of like. Oh
yeah,
I didn't really.
Yeah, that like I'm like, oh okay. It doesn't really mean anything.
It didn't feel like it meant. Yeah, it wasn't like it was like, oh, this guy used to be Quinlan Vos, and I was like, oh, what? like that would have been like his thing, but this is like kind of like, oh, he used to be this guy too, and I was like, oh, yeah, okay,
yep.
But like that stuff aside with him, like I think that's the only part of the book that I was kind of like, I don't really care for him as much and sort of his story bits, but I really love the interaction between Kanan and Hera. One of my favorites was when stormtroopers came looking for them in the bar. Yeah. And they're like, "There's no way out. What do we do? Come down this hallway." It's like, "But there's no exit down here." It's like, "Shh." And then he just pretends to be like a bartender or whatever, and is like, "Hey, why is this door locked? Hey, don't go in there." And like Skelly's inside there, like pretending to be a vomiting Wookiee. Like he's like, make as much noise as you can, and he's in there like, "Rawr!" and like banging a pot.
What's
or something
going on
like
in there?
Like, hey, you ever seen a vomiting alcohol like Wookiee? You know, like you don't want to mess with that right now. It's like, all right, we'll leave him be. You know, and they leave.
Yeah, imagine Black Chrysanthemum drunk.
Yeah,
you know, sick, looking at you. Terrifying.
Like I don't want to mess with that.
Hell
you know, so. I enjoyed moments like that. I enjoyed like
I liked Kanan being the Imperial agent to Sloane. That was an interesting way of doing things.
That was the one when he's like, "Hey, look, I'm for the Emperor," and what he's doing is
and like her like looking back on him being like, "Who was that guy?" So,
and then Hera being like, "Your charm doesn't work. You can't just use that all the time." Like that was the thing. Like Kanan would do this and Hera would do this, and I loved they're trying to escape at one point on like this bus thing. And it's like, this is an old bus, used to fly a long time ago, can't fly anymore. It's just like a hover bus. Yeah. And like Hera's at the controls for like 10 minutes and they start flying away. He's like, "What are you doing?"
I know.
And she's like, "You just got to know how to talk to it." And I'm like, "Oh man."
There was moments like that where I'm like, "Oh dude, I can't wait to see them in the Ghost and she can really show what she can do," you know? And it just didn't happen until the end.
Sure. But I get part of her thing too. Like she has a thing where it's like, I don't show anyone the ghost. Less people that know about it, the better. So unless you're like coming with me, you don't get to see it. And like part of the thing is like, sure, I like her, but I also really want to see this ship. He's like, you might need a crew for that, you know? And I'm like, ooh, which really set me on the idea of like, okay, so I saw how Kanan and Hera got together. It could be fun to see like, well, where does Sabine come in? When does Zeb come in, you know?
Did you see like the cover of the book? Like I bring up my phone on the audiobook, I look at the cover, I'm like, holy crap, look at that. There's Hera with a pistol, there's Kanan with his lightsaber. I'm like, this is going to be nuts, you know? And then what happened?
Well, that was one thing, too, because I kept waiting towards getting to the end and being like, okay, he's going to draw his lightsaber at some point. They talk about him grabbing it and putting it away. And
I know. It was kind of like
they talk about like,
gun a little bit. But
and then they talk to, like, you know, he has the cortosis, like, armor or whatever on the cyborg, and they've shot him, and it sends electricity back. They did, like, they shot a power pack, which, like, scorched his face, but, like, blinded one of their friends, which was Zaluna. And
in the audiobook, kind of sound like Droopy Dog.
Droopy Dog.
Yeah. Well, what about this?
I guess so. I didn't think about that much. But the like going through that, he's like, "You don't have anything that could take me out." And he goes, "Maybe I do." And he reaches for it. I'm like, "Oh, now we're getting to it." But I thought it was interesting that he's like, something told me not to do it.
No, I get it.
And I was like, okay, this is how he reveals he's a Jedi. That person can't see. We kill him. Hera now knows, and that's where we're at. And they didn't do that. And I was like, well, that's fine. But I did kind of like the reveal they had of him being a Jedi to Hera. And I thought it was a nice little moment too, where it's like, why is he revealing that he's a Jedi? Because he wants to save that girl.
Yeah,
you know.
Yep.
And then
let her in on the secret.
Yeah. And Hera has some thoughts that you get a little bit here and there, where she's thinking about like, you know, she's not here to find people to help with like the rebellion kind of side of things.
Yeah.
But she's like, man, he's a really good strategist, but sometimes he's not the smartest. But I don't understand how to read this guy. Like, she's thinking about like where these people, like what their motives are and who they are. Who's Skelly? Who's Zaluna? Who's Kanan? And Kanan's like the biggest mystery, and she kind of wants to stick around a little bit more just to see who he is and what he is and how's he gotten so far.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes she's like, he seems like a really smart, strategic guy, and he seems kind of dumb.
Yeah.
You know, like she kind of like, I don't understand him. And I really liked Hera like learning about Kanan and stuff too.
Me too. Yeah. No, it was a fun read. I think it did have a decent pace in that like characters start and then they keep going. They keep going. It's very like episode 4, right? Like I love Revenge of the Sith, but Revenge of the Sith has like big giant opening. And then we sit around and talk, you know. And then this happens, and we sit around and talk. And this happens, and then, you know, Anakin has a PSP, and he's sitting on the couch, and you're sitting around and talk, you know. Like, whereas this, I felt like it had a good pace. It kept going, you know. So it kept my interest the whole time. Yeah.
It did feel like a prequel to Rebels and stuff. So I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah. And if you're interested in reading it, you know, on your own, if you haven't, like I don't even think you need to have watched Rebels to enjoy it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but certainly, you know, you will care for the characters a bit more. But it will ruin the first episode.
Sure. Yeah. If you're watching this, we've already talked about it, and you should know by now.
Yeah.
But
I imagine most people that watch Wave Squadron have seen most of Star Wars.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think pacing wise for it was really good. The radio thing I thought was cool. Where like they had like certain little like radio things kind of giving you some news every once in a while.
I like that too, like the HoloNet news.
Yeah, which I thought was unique to this one.
It was.
I didn't, as I said before, I didn't realize that this was like the first canon book either. So I also really liked at the very end there was like an excerpt from like Dave Filoni.
The foreword or the whatever.
Yeah, where he talked about like being young and enjoying like the original trilogy, and growing up and like getting to work with George Lucas and getting to work on Clone Wars and all this stuff, and how excited he is that from here on it's all going to be canon. Everything's going to fit into a canon. They're going to work on that. And that he just had like a lot of excitement for that kind of stuff too. And I was like, well, that was a really cool little moment there. It was kind of like when we finished, what was it, like Dark Disciple? And it was like
Katie Lucas.
Yeah. And she was going through and it's like, and seeing my dad and doing this, like, oh man, this is really cool.
Who the hell is
like,
this lady?
Katie Lucas. And I was like, oh man, now I'm all sad.
Yeah, that's certainly like one of my top reactions to a foreword or an epilogue from an author.
Yeah. So I did really enjoy that. Trying to think about other elements here from this book because we don't have a ton of time here, but overall, I think the book was good for Kanan and Hera.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool that we got, at least I got now the first time Sloane shows up in any of the canon and stuff.
Yeah,
too,
I think that for me, that's going to, like, moving forward, that would be one of the most important things is, like, setting up that character.
Yeah, to see where they go and everything with it. But a lot of it, too, like I said, more of the evil side of things. I thought it was interesting having Skelly and Zaluna, and they were both kind of for the Empire, right? And then they start turning to not be for the Empire, right? I think it was Zaluna who was upset at was it the guy got thrown in the acid? Like they were having like a firefight and a guy showed up and he's like no, and he started shooting back and stuff like that too, and then he sacrificed himself and they got away. Like there were just different elements too where like I liked a lot of the other characters that start turning and changing up to the point like Zaluna. I like that they don't know what planet they went to. Yeah, they don't necessarily care. They didn't ask, but they're at peace in their garden here. Yeah. And if you don't take that boy, I'm gonna ask him to stay. And I like the growth of the characters that, at least the ones I liked. Like the Count didn't have any growth. He was just him. He had growth before the book, I guess. I suppose, like he was not a cyborg. Now he is.
He was not the Count, and now he is.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, otherwise, like everything else in it, as far as the story, the reveal of the ghost to Kanan and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, this is really cool. And now I kind of just want to see like what happens with Zeb, Sabine, and I don't know. I guess Chopper was just not there for now. You know, maybe he's watching. I guess not. He might have been watching the ship.
That was another thing. I was like,
you were hoping for Chopper.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, I probably just brought too much baggage in.
Sure.
As a Rebel super fan.
Sure,
you know?
I get that. I will say, and I mentioned it before during our top 5 Kanan moments and stuff too, but I didn't say it here. I really enjoyed the very beginning of the book. Like I liked having the Caleb moment, him talking to Obi-Wan,
the Jedi beacon.
Yeah, talking about the beacon and everything too, of like how it works and what else could it do, and having Deppa there with a little bit. Yeah. And then you had said in that moment too, like it's really nice to have that moment, and they reflect on it at the end of the book, where like, well, when we're gone and we don't have, we're just out there. Like, who do we listen to? Like, what will guide us if we don't have our master? It's like, well, hopefully something else will take that spot, And he reflects on that later after he's found Hera and been like, here's something else that's guiding me now. Yeah. And I was like, that's really cool. I like those little bookends there, especially from his master. So.
Absolutely. And I love that ending of that scene where it's Deppa saying stuff like, well, what happens when I don't have any, I don't know what direction to go in. It's like, it'll come to you. And we see it come to him.
Something will guide you.
And now I finished a book, and I was just kind of like, that was cool. But now I want to watch all of Rebels again.
I know. I did too. I thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yep.
So, but we're already at 5:02 now.
We are.
We didn't get to dive too deep into it, but I think the general thing, like the book was decent. I enjoyed what we had with Kanan and Hera. Yeah. The villain, not so much. But I don't think it was not worth the read, especially if you enjoy the characters from Rebels.
And in terms of us, ticking off slowly, like catching up on canon, we can now say we have read the first book to have come out. Since they relaunched the universe. So we've got one.
So getting that set up, and then what's going on further forward with this, which is going to be the Lords of the Sith. Lords of the Sith. Okay. Yep. I don't know anything more than what Eric had mentioned about this one. So, like, some of the books, I'm like, oh, I know it. I know a little bit about this. This is supposed to be about this and this, right? Yeah. But this one, I'm like, I don't know.
I don't think we have a date picked out for the next Badonkagonk yet, do we?
Ooh, I have not.
Yeah. No. So, you guys make sure
it'll probably be the first week of November.
Yeah, it's probably going to be around then. So, like, the first Thursday of November around then. Make sure you guys are following us on social media. Just blind wave anywhere on social media, and that way you know exactly when things are going to be happening. But yeah, your homework is to read the Lords of the Sith novel, a Vader Palpatine novel. I'm very excited to get into that and to discuss that next time. We'll also have some other segments for Badonkagonk that aren't going to be related to any current TV releases because there are currently none that we have scheduled. So. This will be a bit of a drought with your normal Star Wars content, but not a bit of a drought with Wave Squadron.
Yes. Yeah. So, guys, make sure, as Eric said, make sure to follow along. We'll have a thing that gets posted too on here for when the next Badonkagonk will be, but more than likely look for the first week of November. But otherwise, guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. Hope you guys had fun. Thank you for all the questions. Yeah. Thank you for all the super chats, and we'll see